What is going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for a panel show and a star-studded panel today to get into the nitty-gritties of Tottenham Hotspur, particularly Ange Postecoglou. We have got Brian... I was about to say Brian Chernett. Brian Daigle from Tottenham on tour. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, mate. A lot more calm, relaxed, and just woken up than I was Sunday, and looking forward to having this discussion. And thanks for having me on, boys. It's good to see Sean as well.
Calm and relaxed and Brian Daigle. Didn't they go in the same sentence?
Yeah, I know. Tell me about it.
Whilst I've tried my coffee sim, things may change.
Sean Butler, Spurs Talk Show. I think, Sean, good to see your camera working on the panel show today.
Well, it is from your side, apparently. It's not from mine. It's looking all jumpy and stuff. But listen, I don't know who Brian Turnip is, but if we get a calm version of Brian Daigle, it's going to be interesting. It's great to be back on the channel. I'm surprised you guys want to associate with me after having alienated myself from 4 continents of Tottenham fans over the last 48 hours by going slightly more Ange out, Sunny out, and also Poch in America, Asia, and Australia. I know friends of Sean apparently at the moment. So
I was unaware of this, Sean. I was unaware of this. We wouldn't have got you on. If we knew you were hated in South Korea, we definitely would not have got you on here today. But Sean,
Sean, if you want to make any public statements, backtracking, now's your time.
Yeah, well, I'd like to say, it's nothing to do with anything other than my flip-flop ability. I like to be able to wear Havanas come rain or shine, and tomorrow I might change my mind, and if the numbers and the views are that bad, then I certainly will. So hang around, Australia, hang around, Korea. You never know, I might change my mind once again.
All right, so let's get into the first topic. We're going to talk about Ange Postecoglou, if it's time to go. I mean, a lot of fans were reserving their judgment a lot until the end of the cup competitions, and I felt like there was a bit of a turning point in the away end, especially at Villa Park on Sunday night. I mean, where are you at with it, Sean? Because I cast my mind back to the first leg of the Liverpool game. I was very anti-Ange Postecoglou at that point. You were laying into me before that game and then laid into me after that game, saying, you got to back Ange, you got to back Ange, you got to back Ange. So where are you at with it now?
Well, the reason, I don't think I'm laying into anyone, nor was I saying you have to back. I think my stance has been fairly consistent. I think I've been... frustrated, obviously. I've been empathetic with the plight of the injuries. I think that it's would be remarkably unfair to say that he has had a fair crack with regards to the injuries. Now, putting aside of like how did the injuries happen, why, what's responsible for them, I've also said that I think it would be unfair to relieve him of his duties because of the league performance and the league position when you're still in all 3 cups. And if you get to a semi-final of a cup and you're in the 4th round of another and you're in the last 16 of the 3rd, then I think that, given the fact you weren't going to win the league anyway, that, it's not a failure, right? So I don't think you can, when you bake all that stuff together, I think you had to kind of give it at least until 2 of the 3 cups were done, and or see a couple of other things that might represent the notion that he's lost the dressing room. And as I said a few times this week, I think that losing the dressing room doesn't have to be visible in demonstrations like fights on the pitch or arguments or throwing down the shirt or tantrums, that sort of stuff. It can be just as simple as, players that look confused. And I do think that at times over the last 2 games, there's been several examples where the left hand doesn't look like the right, like he knows what the right hand is doing. I think that, just to go back to say, when Matisse Tell came on the pitch and pressed in the first 30 seconds and then turned around and berated Decky and Sonny, and they said, like, no, we're not pressing. Was that because they're exhausted? Then if so, why were they on the pitch against Villa? Why did you take off Mikey Moore, who has fresher legs? If it's because of an instruction that they weren't supposed to be pressing, they were supposed to be sitting in, tucking in and doing more of a low block kind of vibe against Liverpool, then why was Matisse Tell coming on the pitch with a different energy and a different kind of instruction? I don't know where the truth lies, but I'd imagine it's somewhere within the vibe of that there's a different set of instructions that aren't being communicated. I think when you look at the midfield 3 in both of the games, some of the snapshots that I've seen of like 4 or 5 men chasing one player back after he's broken through, the triangles that we saw with, just seemingly like no structure to the system at all. It just comes across to me like at this point in time, there's a combination of exhaustion for sure, but there's also demonstrations of like just the players are all over the pitch with regards the setup, and there's no solid foundation there that we've seen. Even if you weren't a fan of Plan A, at least Plan A had its formation, right, and its structure, and it was visible, tangible, and consistent. Now, I feel like, again, not to hark on, but I feel like if you were to believe Ange when he said the injuries are not my fault, not the training's fault, we don't even train anymore because we're playing twice a week and there's a recovery process and the medical time and yada yada yada. Then if that's the case, then why are we suddenly flipping to a low block against Liverpool and then something that was between the two against Aston Villa after the first 30 minutes that were just abject? And I just feel like, you know, there's so many question marks that I have now around what is happening in the communication. And I feel like Ange is the master of putting the right words in the right order to make everyone feel empathetic to his plight. But sometimes he comes across to me like he's talking out of both sides of his mouth. And I think that he's a master salesman with the ability to say these things that make everyone feel a little bit sorry. And I get it, right? There's absolute merit to some of the things, a lot of the things that he says. But I also think that there's a lot of demonstrations that the team no longer really understand what it is that's expected or wanted out of what options we do have. And the notion that we don't have any options and that we have what we have and that's it, I just don't subscribe to it. You could have played Ben Davies, right? He's nowhere near has as many minutes in his legs as Pedro Porro, but Pedro Porro plays. You could have played Jed Spence in the right back role and put Pedro Porro forward in the second half against Liverpool, which makes more sense to me. Not that I think Jed Spence had a bad game, but like I think that just there's loads of things that don't make sense. You know, this notion that the back three that we tried against Everton and we shelved it after 45 minutes as a failed experiment. Why? It's a commonly used theme away from home, not usually employed against Everton, who's probably the only team in the Premier League that you wouldn't use it. But either way, just because it didn't work for 45 minutes doesn't mean that you put it away forever. And it came across like he said, well, we tried it, it didn't work, so therefore can I now get back to my usual business, please, and leave me alone? I just think that all of those things culminate to me in a world where he's had enough rope. I think that the 2 cup exits now, I don't really want to wait another month until the last cup. And so I'm ready for change, even though it's a shame. It's a real shame. I wanted it to work. But the conundrum for me now is like, where do you go from here and what's the best option regarding what's next? And I think it's a very difficult square to circle given where we are in the league, who you're probably going to go after, the dry market and all those things. And I'm happy to chew that stuff over. But ultimately, do I think that Ange should be here right now? Probably not, if I'm honest, no.
I want to get back to some of the points that you raised there, but I just want to bring in Brian and get his initial thoughts on Ange. I mean, I kind of think I know what he's going to say here in terms of what his barefaced opinion is, but do you think it is time to go right now? Is he past? Is he on borrowed time right now?
I'm going to start this by pretty much saying exactly what Sean said, which you don't hear a lot with me and Sean, but basically exactly what Sean said. But I'll add a few more things to it. I've said here along and on here mainly that I've never turned on a manager before, never. But after that Arsenal game at the Emirates, just with the lack of fight for a North London derby, you shouldn't need pep talks. You shouldn't need anything to be up for that game and put in 90 minutes worth of fight, and there just wasn't. Then I heard after that Ipswich had lost less games than us, and when you think that they hadn't had their first win until they beat us in mid-November, I was like, what the hell? Then you add the worst points for game record, and all these stats are just not helping. And everything Sean said about the tactics, formation, not being able to rotate players when he says it, when he has been able to. They may not have been at the level, but they certainly were positionally players there to help Ange out and rest players, rotate, try different format. Like Sean said with the trying the back three just once and for one half. Well, he's tried his attacking format with sometimes the wrong set of players over and over and over and over again, and it's failed and it's failed and it's failed during this injury crisis. Yeah, he only gives 45 minutes to a back three. And when we did have the great players for the back three, as in your Van der Vens, your Mickey Romero's, and he could have tried it, he didn't. I think he's just I really wanted this to work, and I really loved him. And thought, you know what, I want to see this. I want to see a project through. I was saying the whole time, I want to see a project through, so at least we can turn around and say, do you know what, Spurs tried something different. They did try a project. They did try and see it through, but it's a results-based business, and he's not getting them. So for me, it's got to be a new approach, because it's just not working.
I wanna ask Sim this question, because Sean brings up the point about, you know, players potentially looking confused, mixed messaging coming in there, and you know, it's something that Ange Postecoglou alluded to, didn't he, after the Liverpool game, about mixed messaging, about the team were dropping back. He wanted them to go and attack. He thought maybe he focused a bit too much on defensive solidity prior to the game, and that maybe brought across a bit of mixed messaging towards a team, which, in my opinion, in a game like that, of that magnitude, is a bit unforgivable in a semi-final. Like, how is mixed messaging going into a semi-final? You should know your exact game plan. The players should know the exact game plan, and you should go and try and implement that. I mean, why is that happening?
I think in that specific game, we know that we were going into the game with a 1-0 lead, going into the cauldron that is Anfield with the situation that we're in. So I'm sure that Ange wanted us to have a bit of that kind of defensive nous that maybe we showed against Brentford, not obviously go there and go completely gung-ho, but also not be a bit braver than we were on the ball, not just completely sit deep and wait to concede, essentially, which we did when we went to Anfield, how we approached the game, I think. And I think, obviously, first of all, there's a few different things going into this situation. It's not just the injury crisis, which is obviously a massive factor. You've also got players coming in like Gray, Bergvall, who are very, even Tell, teenagers, very young, quite early on in their careers. They still got to learn, you know, the tactical side of the game, all these different things. You got Danso making his debut. You got Kinski, who's a 21-year-old goalkeeper who's, you know, very early on at this kind of level. And you've got a lot of senior players who are, quite frankly, knackered, and they're quite frankly been playing a hell of a lot of football over the last 2 months. So all these things put into one cauldron, one melting pot, has led to the issues that we face. Now, in terms of the mixed messaging, I think it was right for Ange to tell the players, you need to make sure we're not making it easy for Liverpool to make chances like we did in the first leg, making sure that they're finding it difficult to create chances and finding it difficult to open us up. But also, he should have maybe focused on more that we have to be braver off the ball, and we do that by being brave on and off the ball like we were in the first leg as well. We did create chances in that first leg, and we could have won that first leg by more than a goal, in all honesty, and we probably look back and regretting that we missed those chances in that first leg to not take a big lead to Anfield. So I think he said the majority of the messaging was about how we defend, but I don't think he expected, because he knows what team he wants us to be. He knows that everyone knows that we are a team that, at any given situation, we are going to try and score goals during the game. We are going to try and win, but we didn't do that at all against Liverpool, and we completely neglected that side of the game. Now, whether I think Ange has to take responsibility for that, and I think he did after the game. He said, maybe I focused too much on that, and maybe I didn't drum into the players that we still need to be brave, and we still need to try and score goals and go there and at least take the game a bit to them. But I also think if we would have gone there and gone gung-ho and started like we did against Villa, where we were, you know, completely going at them and conceded, he also would have got pillared, and that also is not an unlikely situation given Liverpool. I also think you're playing the best team in Europe. You're playing a team as well with one injury, a team in unbelievable momentum, and they've pretty much got their first choice 11 out there. Whatever we did in the situation that we were in, it's unlikely we would have gotten the result. It would have taken a miracle to go out there into the final.
Result that's the thing that hurts the most, is it though?
No, it's not. It's the way we went about it, and it was a shit show from start to finish. I'm not going to deny that. We didn't have a shot on target, and that was the most disappointing. That was the most... Look, you can be angry about that, and you're right, and you're within your rights to be angry about that. But you also got to realise who we were facing, and they were not a bad team. This is the best team in Europe right now. I think most people would agree. I think this is an incredible team. Better teams than us have also. add into the fact you got Anfield, right? Better teams than us. I've seen the Centurions go there in a Champions League semi-final. This is a team that got 100 points in the Premier League. They went to Anfield and shit the bed in the Champions League semi-final, losing 3-0. Like this is a ground that can get the best of players out of funk, and we're not the best at all. We're far from it. We are a team which is tired. We're a mishmash, and we're absolutely on our feet. And we're a young team. We're a team that's also still growing. We're not this well-oiled machine yet. I think we showed signs at the beginning of the season that we can be a good team, but we're still growing. We were still yet to get to that point yet, and obviously this injury crisis hit before we got to that point. So I think for me, as much as I was angry and annoyed about Anfield and Sunday as well, I thought the performance was, again, all over the place. But I just think it's a myriad of problems. It's not just the injury crisis. It's not the players that is missing. It's not even just the players that are there as well. It's the fact that the players that are there are young. They're new to the team. They're inexperienced. They're not gelled. The back line is keep chopping and changing seemingly every week. There's no kind of consistency. There's players in the front line who are having to play every week because we've got very, very few options. And there's even players that people are calling for. Mikey Moore comes in. He's a 17-year-old kid. We're relying on a 17-year-old to come in and try and get results in these big games. I mean, I just feel for him. I really do feel for him in this current situation with where we're at. And I understand that you look at the overall results and you look at the big picture, and you can say the results are the results, and regardless of the situation, he should be getting better results, and we shouldn't be there's no situation we should ever be 14th and all this kind of stuff. And I hear that and I want to believe that, but sometimes that's the reality of the situation. I think I'm not sitting here saying I think he deserves another season or anything like that. I'm just saying we've gone through this whole injury crisis where he's had double-digit injuries for a long, long time, and the club have said they're sympathetic to these injuries. That's why they're not sacking him. So I think it would be then unfair to then, on the precipice of him getting these players back, say, actually, we're going to give these players to another manager. I think that'd just be illogical, in my opinion. And you might as well just give him to the end of the season. I don't see a better short-term option. I'd rather give it to Ange than Mason. I don't see us getting a manager like Iraola or whatever. You could maybe get an outside-of-the-box manager from Europe to come in right now. But I just think if you're gonna stick through him within the injury crisis, you might as well give him that Europa League run and see if you can turn the form around. And then at the end of the season, if you've made that decision, it's not working, then you go your separate ways. But I think for now, you might as well stick with him.
Yeah, but if you can potentially get a manager in right now, I'm not saying you can, but let's say potentially like Pochettino would join. I know he probably won't, or Iraola would join right now. Would you not take it?
If I think
they could join right here, right now, tomorrow, if I could say to you a Pochettino or Iraola would join Spurs, would you not take it?
No, to be honest, because they also play a very high intensity system, and I think they also play in a certain way that could also cause the same problems. I think I would rather just allow Ange to see what he can do with the players he's coming back, rather than just giving it to a new manager right now, in my opinion. I think I don't see the point in changing up mid-season and going and trying to get this new manager to implement new ideas from now to the end of the season. I'd rather see if Ange can prove that he's right, that the injuries are the source of the problems, and then we'll know. And if he's right, then fantastic. If he's not right, and we continue with these results even with the players back, then we'll know for sure and we can go our separate ways. I think this season is on the precipice of being dead anyway. I don't think we'll get much joy by changing the manager. I don't think and changing the way we play. I think the players are still, in my opinion, behind him, and I think they still want to play for him. So I think on that basis, I might as well just stick with Ange to the end of the season. I think that's the biggest upside we can have, I think.
I just want to say quickly, and I think Sean said it, and I've said it a while as well, people need to get Pochettino out of their minds. It's always the dream for him to get. He's not coming back. He may be in England right now. First of all, for him to come, Daniel Levy would need to apologise and admit he got it wrong. Not going to happen. Then he's going to need to pay a whopping, severance or package to get him out, compensation. And then thirdly, he's got the chance, not many managers in the world that get, to be a manager of a host nation at a World Cup. There's just no chance. If people still think Poch or they want Poch back, and I'm not particularly bothered whether he does or he doesn't. I loved him when he was here, but obviously it didn't end well. Is you're going to have to wait at least till after the World Cup. So it's the typical find another manager until he becomes available, because anyone thinking Pochettino is going to come in as this white knight and save the day, it's just not happening. And I know it gets in Spurs' heads, and I know the fantasy and the romantic side of it, but manage expectations. It's not happening.
What kind of manager would you like to see in then, Brian?
Well, like I said, whatever, I've said it before. I think any manager that comes, they're screwed before their contract dries. The ink on their contract dries, and we'll be here in 18 months again, regardless. I said it before.
What's the point in changing managers then? There's probably no point to change managers then.
This is the state we're in.
There is a point. There is a point to change managers.
But just look at the one I've said as well, and I wanted him before Postecoglou, and I've watched so many interviews and extended like days at Brentford. I love Thomas Frank. I think he is wildly underrated. Yes, I get Iriola for the style of playing, what he's doing for Bournemouth, sorry. But I think what Thomas Frank has done at Brentford, changes within games, does everything with a better crop of players. I think Thomas Frank I think he's so wildly underrated. If we could get someone in, and it had to be, let's say, with Premier League knowledge, whether it be at former or current, I just love Thomas Frank. I love him.
Go on, Sean. There is a point.
Well, there's a point. So I think, I'm not sure if Brian, when he said, Sean and I agree on this, I personally do want Pochettino back. I agree with him that I think he's not going to come and leave America before the World Cup. They rolled out the red carpet for him. So, as I said in my first answer, I think that the conundrum, at least in the way I would like to see it, I would like to see Poch back post 26. And I think that Ange has run his course. But listen, I think, Sim makes a good argument for the Ange in just as much as Ange does, right? But Ange, I think, says, I don't want to make excuses or whatever. I'm not that kind of guy. But then these are the 25 reasons why it's not my fault. I think that there are plenty of options still available to him that he's not showing and not engaging with. And that's where I land, right? It's like I'm empathetic to the cause and the plight, but at the same time, to say that you don't have any options, I think you have fewer options for sure. And I also, think that there's an argument to say, well, just as you're getting him all these players back allegedly, then it's unfair to relieve him and give it to someone else. Either way, I've chudled that over in my head, and I've landed on the fact that I think that he's had enough rope, right? And so, but then I go, well, if I want Poch, because I don't think you can convince Iriola to come now. And for what it's worth, everybody that's like Iriola's the Don, well, I'm not sure if you've had him on your channel. If you haven't, you should. Drew Zilla, he comes on my channel quite a lot. He's a stats guy. He loves digging into the stats. Most people don't talk about Iriola before Bournemouth. And he was
brilliant.
Very, very, below bang average when he was at places before.
Was it? I thought he'd done really well in Spain.
I think he had four seasons hanging around the relegation zone. Yeah, well, listen, I haven't looked into it. I listened to Drew's take on it, and he sounds very convincing when he says that the guy was. I mean, maybe listen, I don't know, whatever. Forget that point, right? But Iriola is for me a massive risk, regardless, right? Even if you're just basing it on the Bournemouth form. As I said before 1,000 times, right? There's a never-ending list of managers that have taken their team from the also-rans to knocking on the door of Europe. But if you are gonna, hang your hat on this notion that he's the guy, there's very few managers that have done that and been successful. The one name that has taken a team, impressed at the lower league, or impressed at the kind of lower end of the Premier League, got his chance at a team, and then taken that team who hasn't really been that successful, knocked on the door more times than anyone else, is Pochettino, right? And if you look at Thomas Frank, you look at Marco Silva. I go to the co-op down the road every day, and there's 3 Fulham fans that work in there, and they all tell me that Marco Silva is more respected by non-Fulham fans than he is by Fulham fans. The Fulham fans get very frustrated with him. And so, again, another example, Thomas Frank, I share Brian's admiration for the guy, but another manager that has done very well taking a team to a sustainable level. But all of these teams, Fulham's, the Brentfords, the Brightons, the Bournemouths, like, for me, they might look at their own clubs right now and think, why would I leave them to come to Tottenham? But I maintain the same narrative that I always do, which is when those teams want to kick on to the next level, they are going to really struggle, because in order to kick on and become not just a maybe European contender, but to go to that next division of elitism, then those clubs are not set up to be able to be non-selling clubs, right? In terms of the revenue streams that they generate, the way that they become sustainable is via player trading. If you want to hang on to your best players to test whether Iraola is ready for Tottenham, to test whether Thomas Frank is ready for Tottenham, those players can't sell. Those players can't be sold. They have to find other revenue streams to be able to supplement what they already have. And until those things happen, as I say, there's no examples. Very, very few examples. Maybe Eddie Howe is a good example, but very, very few examples of managers that have actually gone to the next stage. Pochettino is the best and the most likely to have done that in most people's eyes, I would imagine. So I would like to see Poch, but how do you square the circle of the next 18 months? Well, look, I'm guilty of saying you should have given Ange until the Cups. Unfortunately, 4 weeks ago, there was a manager available who I believe probably would have been a decent fit for that 18-month, 2-year transition, because I think that with Tottenham's and Daniel Levy's movement towards youth-centric profiling of how we can remain competitive, but also not break the wage structure, also not break the bank, is by going after all the best talent. And I think that Tottenham fans should be rightly excited about the future, because we have quietly gone about building the greatest, I think one of the greatest youth-centric models in European football, if not the Premier League at least, but certainly across Europe. There's very few teams that are putting together a better profile of players under the age of 21. To me, though, you need a manager and a coaching staff that have got a track record of getting the best out of that potential. Graham Potter is one. What he did at Brighton was fantastic. Look at Evan Ferguson's rise and then decline. You look at other players that came along like Caicedo, etc. All of that stuff can be attributed to what someone like Graham Potter does. Maybe the short-term gap is a 2-year contract to someone like Ian McKenna, who also has a track record of doing really good things with youth players. He even did it within the Tottenham ecosystem.
From Ipswich.
Sorry, Kieran McKenna. Sorry, my bad. Yeah. Brain fart. Kieran McKenna.
He's a Tottenham boy as well, Kieran McKenna.
Tottenham boy as well, right? Exactly. He's a Tottenham boy as well. And I know.
But is he not guilty of doing everything everyone accuses Ange of doing, not adapting and just playing his way or the highway? And that's cost Ipswich lots of points this season. I've seen them playing out the back, giving away goals, and he kept playing the same way. Is that not guilty of what people accuse Ange of doing?
Right, but he has a track. The difference being, and people were chastising the Burnley manager Company, right, last season, of doing exactly the same thing. They get relegated, and Company goes off to Bayern Munich, right? So to me, was it Bayern Munich or was it Leverkusen?
Yeah, Bayern.
Bayern, right. So to me, I think there's what I'm looking for is a continuation of the trend towards attractive football, but that someone that has a proven track record of developing youth in the interim period between now and the end of the 2026 World Cup season. And like I say, I think that for me, Ange Postecoglou, and forgive me for my ignorance here, I don't know what his track record was with youth development in Australia, and I don't know what I know he obviously failed with the Australian youth setup back in the day, and the same earmarks of his kind of sooky nature, where he doesn't like difficult questions, is there for everyone to see on the YouTube videos of him when he was called out on the mainstream in Australian TV. But since then, I don't know whether he had a track record in Japan. I don't know, but I don't think that anyone really, when you hear the name Ange Postecoglou, you very seldom associate him with successful youth team development or youth team player or youth player, young player development, right? In terms of what he did at Celtic. I don't know if that's fair or not, but it's not a relationship that's often spouted. And so I'm looking for someone who has a track record of doing that in the interim between now and hopefully 2026 when you can get Poch in. And so for me, you could look, there's a number of managers out there that can continue the movement towards attractive football, but also can develop some of this promising talent that we have, of which we have bundles, but just need someone who can put an arm around the guys and get the best out of them.
That Ange is definitely known for bringing in younger players, 100%. That's what he was. That's what his kind of job was in his previous clubs. He'd come in, take out all the older players. I don't know about Celtic, but in his previous jobs before then, I know definitely in the Australian national team, definitely when he was in Australia, and also in Japan, he would come in, get rid of all the older players. Anyone who he thought was a bit older and kind of experienced players, he'd shit them off, bring in younger players, and add energy to the team. That was what he was known for doing. 100%.
Okay, well, I haven't seen enough of it. I haven't seen enough of it at Tottenham Sim. I've seen players being used.
We're the top of the league this season for minutes given to teenagers.
Yeah, of course, but that's not through choice. Right? Let's just be straight up here. Jed Spence, not that he's a young player anymore, but you can almost write off the last 3 years of his career because all managers dismissed him. He's only there because of choice. Archie Gray would not be playing the minutes he's had because if it wasn't for the injuries. Same with Lucas Bergvall. Same with.
They're all starting Europa League games, Sean. They were bedding in. These are young players at a new big club. They were bedding into the team, right? So that he gave them starts in Europa League with a view of them eventually getting starts in the Premier League. That is how you develop young players.
If that's the case, then why is he making excuses saying we have no options off the bench? We are where we are, 12 players out, but yet you take off Mikey Moore against Villa, but you leave on Decky and Sonny. Why is it?
Because Mikey Moore was getting bullied and he's a 17-year-old kid.
In my opinion, Mikey Moore was the best outfield player in that game, in that first half.
I disagree. Villa. I think he created one chance. Fair enough. This is not me bashing him. I just thought he was getting bullied a bit, and I thought
who was a better player? Did Decky
was much better than him in the second half. Much better, 100%.
In the first half, when the decision was made,
in the second half,
huh?
You said Decky played poorly in the first half.
I'm saying we changed it. Decky was a lot better and Spurs were a lot better in that second half. I thought it was a good change.
In the first half, when the decision was made to hoist one of them, Sonny, Decky or Mikey Moore, in the first half performance, before the decision was made, who was the worst of the three? It wasn't Mikey Moore.
Yes, but he was the one getting bullied the most. Yeah, 100%.
And he's the one that's got the freshest legs. And then you come out afterwards and say, the guys are exhausted.
The guy is a 17-year-old kid. We've got to protect him. He's getting bullied out there. Every time he got the ball, he's getting shoved off. Yes, he got one chance. He was. I know he created that one chance, and everyone remembers it. And fair enough. This is not me bashing Mikey Moore at all. I think it was a good assessment from Ange, and I think actually we improved after Mikey Moore went off. I thought Decky was a lot better.
We improved for 15 minutes.
I want to add to this about that he brings through youngsters. He stayed at clubs 3 years maximum, and then let's just say he gets he's now waiting for his first team players to get back, which aren't the youngsters, and then we've got it's a myth with all he does to say we've got a young team is put youngsters on the bench because we haven't got enough quality to put on the bench. All these youngsters coming through, your Donnellys, your Divines that are out there, your Scarlets that are playing now, like Sean said, through choice, through necessity. Lakshia's gone out on loan. All these players that we have, if he was here next season, he's not going to all of a sudden say, Van der Ven, Romero, you're out, and you're all going to start now. He may have brought young players through but it's I don't know how we could say he's a manager that brings through youth when he stays 3 years.
You're only talking about teenagers. The whole team is young. Doggy's 22, Van der Ven's 22, Sarr is 21. The guy has brought in a very young team.
How many of them has he made better?
I think a lot of them have been better. Obviously, the squad at the moment, if you look at it right now, obviously no one's better because of the situation we're in. But I think if you
how many of the players over the last 18 months?
Sarr's been better.
Has he?
Yeah,
I don't think he has. I think he's fallen off a cliff. I think his passing ability is atrocious.
So you're saying Sarr is not better than he was 18 months ago?
I think Sarr recently has been absolutely shocking.
Who started him? Who brought him into the team?
Conte.
No, Ange.
Conte
barely played him. He played him one game. What are you talking about?
More than he was one that gave him his debut and brought him into the team.
No. Ange started him. Conte did not trust Sarr. That's a fact. And Conte started in one game.
Specifics of one player aside.
How is that controversial to say?
Hang on, specifics of one player aside of who started who.
Brennan, Decky. I think a lot of these players have built
the judgment call on whether or not Ange is a developer of youth should not be a line in the sand whether or not the whole squad is young. That's a decision made by Daniel Levy and Paratici 3 years ago to go in that direction. My argument is, has Ange Postecoglou made any of these players that have been, even the players that you're talking about that are slightly more kind of senior players but still of a young age, like Pedro Porro, like Kulusevski. I mean, Kulusevski is definitely better for sure. I think he's better, but is he better because Of Ange, I don't know. I think he's a better player because of his confidence. The rest of them, I'd make the argument I'd make the argument that most of this team have not really progressed in their development as a player by Ange Postecoglou, and that for me is the bridge, the gap that we need to fill over the next 18 months before hopefully I get my way and Poch comes back.
Sean, I don't even think Kulusevski is confidence. I think Kulusevski's got much better because he's been moved centrally. It's positionally.
Fine. Yeah,
they've moved it. They've moved him central, and he's got a lot more.
Though.
Sorry about Ben.
That is down to Ange because he's the one that moved him centrally.
100%. Obviously, putting him in the position we wanted to see him in, and we saw it at the end of last season at Sheffield United when it was Sheffield United, a relegated team, but he is a lot more of an asset when he's central and can go where he wants, as opposed to hogging that right touch line and being very, very, very predictable. He's had a lot more impact from that position, and he has obviously been our standout player over the whole. I mean, recently now it's Jed Spence that's coming through, and again that's with Ange. He could have played.
That's by accident. That was in spite of
That's what I'm saying.
Complete accident.
It's a complete fluke. And if Destiny and Porro or
Archie Gray hasn't even been played. Going back to the game against Aston Villa, we were crying out after 3 minutes, after 30 seconds. It was so obvious to everyone with two brain cells between their ears that the absence of a six, and I understand that Ange's plan A, when you invert the fullbacks, I understand that you don't necessarily need a six if you're asking the fullbacks to step in and be a part of that system. But if you ask the fullbacks to go back to a traditional model where they're going to overlap and be wider, then this notion that you don't need a six is alien to a traditional model of football. A 4-3-3 without inverted fullbacks needs a six, and you have one in Archie Gray. You could have played Ben Davies. You didn't need to play Archie Gray on the left-hand side. Ben Davies is nowhere near as tired as any of the other players and has nowhere near as many minutes in his legs, and yet Ange Postecoglou didn't do it. So this notion that Ange is a developer of youth, I just don't see it. Maybe you're right, Sim. I don't know his history very I haven't gone through the annals of history to know how great he is and what the names are of the players that become brilliant monsters under his tenure. But at Tottenham, I think a lot of it's by accident and by force, as Brian said, by necessity. And then the players that have really shone, they would not be playing anywhere near the minutes that they had if it wasn't for the fact of the injury crisis that has gone his way, which again I'm empathetic towards.
That's how it should be. You should be developing players correctly. When you've got two 18-year-old kids, you should be bedding them in. You shouldn't be throwing them in there. And that's what he was doing until it got to the point where he had to throw them in. And now they're probably too much.
Right.
They're probably playing too much now because they have to.
No, but he doesn't have to. He didn't have to play Archie Gray. He could have moved him into the six. He could have played Ben Davies. Why did Ben Davies not start that game against Villa?
I don't know why he didn't start the game against Villa, but he decided to play Gray there for one reason or another. Look, Davis has also probably played too much since he's come back. There's a number of times where he was supposed to not play 90 minutes. He had to because of other injuries, and all of a sudden he had to stay on the pitch. So maybe he wanted to give him a bit of rest. Look, he's trying to rest players. That's why he rested Basuma, rested Sarr, trying to give some sort of modicum of rest at some points. But there's only so much he can do at this point. Look, he started Gray. I was a bit confused why he started Gray, to be honest, but I'm not going to hang my hat on that and say he has to go because of that kind of decision. I think at the moment, the situation he's in, I understand people want better, they want results, whatever the situation, but it's an almost impossible situation to manage right now.
I'm not advocating for Ange to be shipped out and moved on because of the results. I'm very, very much aware of the situation, circumstance. I'm saying that there were two rationales. I said this in my first answer. Two reasons why I would pivot to Ange out. One is a version of players losing faith, which I think has manifested through confusion, and/or if the cups go south. And to be entirely honest, I think the Liverpool performance was abject, and the manager is responsible for that, and the players are responsible.
Sean, is there no surprise there's confusion though? Is there no surprise that there's confusion right now when we've got very young players, 18-year-old players playing with very little training because they have to keep fit and just have recovery, right? And you've got new players coming to the team. You've got young players who have not played at this kind of level so consistently. And you've got to couple this all together to create a cohesive pressing structure against very, very good opposition on every 3 days. I think for me, it's no surprise.
You have to fight. But it's not.
He's trying.
It's about the. Listen, this is why I hark back to this idea that I think he's a very good salesman. I think that there are there's people in life that love to sit there and say, blame me if you want. It doesn't bother me, but protect these players, right? He says all the sound bites that make you empathetic to his plight because he's protecting young players. But in reality, the idea that I don't care what you say about me, he really does. Otherwise, he wouldn't have such a stark 180 between when he wins and the cocky, confident, funny version of him that comes out versus when he loses and he can't even, give the fans who only get 15 minutes with him and to hear his thoughts once a week or twice a week. I think that he does care. And listen, there's a word in Australia. There's a word in Australia for people that act that way. It's a sook, right? And I think that he acts that way.
Me in Australia.
Yeah, I've been called it. I lived there for 3 years. They call that to me. But I just think that this notion, Sim, it's not about the result against Liverpool. It's not even about the result against Aston Villa. It's about the fight. And in the 90 minutes against Liverpool, there was none. There was absolutely none. It was so unbelievably unacceptable from a team of players that the manager is responsible for getting ready. He is known for his ability to put together a wonderful, passionate pre-match pump up, right? Almost as good as your pre-match pump ups on this channel. They're phenomenal when they work, right? But not against Liverpool. It wasn't. I don't care if we lose, but you have to fight. We didn't. And then the first 30 minutes against Villa, it was embarrassing. And Ange has to take responsibility, not for the outcome, but for the input. And it wasn't good enough. And that's why I think that those are demonstrations of a confused output that you can't continue to really have that much patience for.
Yeah, and you look at how the squad has been affected by these injuries and by these players. You look at Pedro Porro, who's played I think the most minutes out of anyone in the whole across the whole of Europe, which never should be the case, especially when you've had someone like Jed Spence for the whole first half of the season. You look at the point that you were talking about before, and I didn't speak about it, but I think you're right in what you're saying. Kulusevski, when you're looking at last season to this season, is the only player that Ange Postecoglou has been able to improve. You look at everyone else from anyone in the back line, Destiny Udogie, Pedro Porro, moving into the midfield and the attack. Tell me one player, Sim, that he's improved. Brendan hasn't even improved that much.
He's improved.
Not really.
He's improved.
He's improved his output, but has he improved as a player?
Yeah, I think so.
No, he hasn't.
I think he has.
He hasn't.
I think he has improved as a player. I think Maddison's better than last season. I think...
Really?
Yeah. I think Sarr at points.
What?
I think Sarr's better. Well, Maddison's better than he was probably since January last season. He's been better this season. Yeah, for sure. I think he's been better this season.
It's a really low bar, mate. The guy's been bang average since he came into this team.
Simeon, I have to say, when they
since January last season and compared to this season, he's been better. I think so.
So he's gone from absolutely
when they hand out the New Year's honours lists for dedication to Ange, you are the only one that's going to get knighted. You are the way you have defended this man. You deserve some kind of medal. You deserve some kind of honour. Because you are sticking to your guns, and there are a lot of people, or a majority of people.
I think right now it's hard for anyone to improve as well in this current situation. I think if you're looking earlier in the season, Sarr was in brilliant form, and you can definitely say because Sarr was in poor form at the end of last season, he definitely improved.
If you have elite players,
there was a small period in the middle where he was good.
If we had bought leaders and people that could be highly influential, there were players on that pitch that wouldn't accept what is going on the pitch right now. If we went and brought in characters that had high standards, self-pride, dedication, and commitment to fight for that badge and run through a brick wall, this wouldn't be acceptable. But we don't buy those type of players because A, they'll want a high wage, B, they cost a lot of money, and that's where the shit stops. These players don't have the right mentality. You look at it, that semi-final that we've all spoken about, I go back in the night. If we had people like Colin Calderwood, Paul Allen, Steve Sedgley, David Howes, I could go on, Justin Edinburgh, they would do their conkers during that 90 minutes and say, we might not get the result, but you bloody well put in a performance. And these players do not have the desire to put in a performance. And that's a big issue. That is a massive, massive issue.
And also, Brian, I'm looking at this form over the last 2.5 months, right? And only the players that he's been forced to play, like the Spencers, like the Bergvals, like the Archie Gray, these are the guys actually that are stepping up for us on a consistent basis. The players that he actually wants to play are putting in stinkers more or less week in, week out.
Correct. Absolutely bang on.
So
I promised him last night on text that I'd be his ally today, and I'd help him out.
3-on-1,
But you know what?
Sean. 3-on-1. I'm disappointed in you.
you've done Sim the dirty, Shawnee. You've done Sim
Thrown
the
him
dirty.
right under the
stabbed.
bus.
This is the worst betrayal I've ever seen.
Sim's only
Look.
trying to get guests so they're going
He's
to be
like
your
a
ally. He's
Trojan
like,
horse.
finally, someone come with me in the Ange out camp. Someone, anyone. Josh King has deserted him. Now you've deserted him. There's no one left.
Well, look, you know, you gotta make logic. You gotta make sense, Sim, for me to join you, buddy. And on the
I
Ange
make
train, I'm not so
perfect sense.
sure. On
I
other
make
trains,
perfect sense.
there's probably some merit to your arguments, but not
All
this
I'm
one,
saying
mate.
is give him to the end of the season. That's all I'm saying.
And then who? Who do you want in the summer?
I don't know. See who's available. I think you assess it then. Look, who
Yeah,
do I
but
want in
also
the
you
summer?
did say a couple of weeks ago if we go out both rounds of the cup, early at this stage. I know we got to semi. You said it a couple of weeks ago that you will be Ange out.
No, I didn't. I said I think the club would sack him. I didn't
Oh, the
think. I
club
don't know.
would
I never
sack
said. I never said I would be Ange out. I said actually after that Wolves game, I said I'll give him to the end of the season. When we had the first time we had the big debate, I said whatever happens, I want to give him to the end of the season, and I still stick by that. As I've said, I think right now it's hard for him to cobble together any sort of cohesive unit that he wants to and get this team to play for a myriad of reasons. It's not just because the players are tired as well. There's a lot of young players, inexperienced players, all these different things that are coming in to why the press isn't as organised as it should be, why they're not getting closer to the players as they should be because of the fatigue, why the quality is not there as well. It's like a whole mishmash of problems coming into
Are
the
the
melting
senior
pot.
players, Sim? Are the senior players, and dare I say it, players like Sonny, are they pulling their weight enough?
Well, they're not. Of course, they're not. I mean, Sonny, obviously, before the Liverpool game, was playing quite well. I thought in some games, but unfortunately, in the last two games, they haven't. They haven't been able to do it. But again, they're trying to probably. They're covering a lot of issues. They're also very tired. They're also overplayed. There's a lot of issues. It's not just like one thing. It's not just the injuries. It's such a mishmash of issues, which I think whatever he does right now, when you. The number one thing in football, in my opinion, right? The number one thing that gets you to compete is not tactics and all these things. Yes, that helps, but first of all, you have to be physically ready and physically on par with your opponent. If you can't run, that's going to massively hamper you. And this team at the moment, they're very much struggling with those physical aspects.
What about a player like Bentancur? You know, I'm a massive advocate of Lucas Berger. I think he's going to be a sensational player. I looked at him against Villa, and if I'm a Villa fan and Tottenham are 1-0 up, for example, and you're a bit frustrated, Lucas Bergwijn should have been booked inside the first 10 minutes. He made like maybe 5 or 6 fouls, a lot of them cynical. And
because he's running around like he's an
not-
inexperienced player.
100%. Sorry, what I was going to say was, but what you need in that scenario is someone with bags of experience to give him a tap on the shoulder and say, you know, calm down a little bit, right? He's 19. He's just turned 19, so he's going to make mistakes. I love Lucas Bergwijn. I think he's going to be brilliant. I'm not sure what his best position is, but I think he's going to be sensational in a couple of years. But Ronnie Bentancur doesn't have the excuse of 2,000 minutes in his legs, right? So it's not just Sonny, by the way. There's plenty of examples of the more experienced players, and that's why I'm kind of at this point, for me personally, I'm all in on this youth revolution. But I literally want to see the vast majority of the senior players sunset. And I want to see us bring a couple of players in. I really do think that Daniel Levy and and the board and the money that we create, I do believe that you're going to see a club record signing in the summer. I do believe that if you are to get rid of Timo Werner, who's going to go back anyway, maybe Richarlison moves on because I think he needs a breather from Tottenham. And even if you were to sunset Sonny, you're going to free up another £500,000 a week off the wage bill, another £24 million a year. And then I think you're going to see Tottenham be able to not only break a club transfer record, but also start to have new names at the highest end of the club salary bill. And I genuinely want. I'm all for the youth revolution. Of course, you need to sprinkle in there some experienced players. But I look across our senior players right now on the roster, and I look at and I think these guys aren't it. These guys are not it. So, I think that for me, there's just when you look at the senior names on the list, boys, I don't know if you agree or disagree, but I feel like there's not enough leadership. There's not enough support of the young on the pitch. And then I know you say, Sim, that Ange has got a track record in the past of developing youth, but I'm not seeing the development in the Tottenham spot.
I think Bergval's a lot better than he was earlier in the season.
Well, yeah, I love him. I really do. I've got such high expectations and such high hopes for that guy. But I do think he needs people around him that are going to calm him down, because otherwise, if he stays on the pitch and continues what he's doing, we're going to finish the game with 10 men many times. I think he's got.
Will be as good now though if he wasn't forced into it like he was because of the injuries?
That's regardless of the point. He's saying developed. But beginning of the season, Bergval was.
That's been a key cog in his development.
Bergval, beginning of the season, was playing Europa League games. He was doing all right. Don't get me wrong. Some games he was struggling, like Galatasaray or whatever, and some games he was playing quite well. And he developed into a point where he got man of the match at home in Carabao Cup against Liverpool. Man of the match, scoring the winning goal.
Because he was forced into it.
That's development.
He was forced into it.
You can say he's forced into it. I think he was. He was forced into it. But regardless, I think that was always the plan with Bergval, to bed him in early on. He's come from a new league, Swedish league. He's 18 years of age, an 18-year-old kid, right? You always have to be careful with these kids, and that's what he was doing, Ange. And he was bedding him in slowly. He was starting him though regularly in games, which is more than a lot of other 18-year-old kids around the Premier League can say. And yes, maybe he's forced into it, but I think he probably would have got more minutes anyway, regardless. Maybe not as many as he's got now. He's probably being overplayed now, but that's regardless of the situation. He probably would have got more minutes as the season went on, and he's now got to a stage where he's capable of performance like that against Liverpool. And yes, he's still 18 or 19 now, and he's obviously going to have inconsistencies. He's going to be over exuberant. He's going to make fouls. He's going to have to learn the game at this level. But I think he has been developing over the season, and he's gotten better and better. That's what I've seen.
If we were to stick with the plan that Postecoglou wanted and the plan that he was implemented, and without the injuries, we wouldn't have had that performance at Liverpool in the first leg. That would never have happened because he wouldn't have been developed in time. He was forced into development because of the injuries and to get minutes at that stage of the season.
Yes, it's no coincidence he's become a better player this season, in my opinion.
Yeah, because of injuries, and he's been forced to get more minutes.
I think he was developing. I think he was developing I think since he's come in, and I think you can say it's got nothing to do with Ange, but you can't. You can't say one thing and then the other. Either he gets credit for both and criticism for the other, or nothing at all. In my opinion, you're asking me who's he developed. I'm saying Bergval's gone better. You're saying it's just luck. I just disagree.
Well, even if it is that, Sim, that's one player.
Could you not make the argument though that the fact that Bergval he's only been here 4 months.
Yeah.
It's difficult to say has he developed him because we didn't know what he was before he came here.
Well, I'm just basing on what I've seen from the beginning of the season to lately.
Well, but
is that not development?
Fair enough.
18-year-old kid, you know what I mean?
Listen, Sim, what I would say, mate, is welcome to the world of being in an isolated environment, mate. With me, with Daniel Levy, I am 100%
the day in the life of Sean. I'm living.
There's been a transfer during January. There's been a switch between Sean and Simeon.
Where are we going?
All right. I mean, Brian, do you think if let's say for argument's sake we get these players back now, we go on and run the Europa League, we eventually win it, does that save his job?
If he wins the Europa League, of course it's going to save his job. If he wins the Europa League, he'll go down as one of the most successful managers in Spurs' history.
Is that a problem? Is that a problem, Brian? Though I've been calling it out.
I know.
I've seen part of, do you want? Because I've seen channels saying, relegation is better for the mission, right? With regards to Daniel Levy and
just
trophies,
madness.
And it's absolute madness. And trophy success, i.e., beating Liverpool and then going on to beat Newcastle, is actually now a bad thing. When the movement was predicated on the idea that the reason why most people hate Daniel Levy, for the most part, is because of the lack of trophies, and suddenly winning a trophy became problematic. What I would ask you, Brian, I'm not asking you to subscribe or to deny that cause, but if you don't want Ange, and he still happens to be here at the end of the season, and in that time we happen to go on and win the Europa League, then that by itself, away from the Daniel Levy thing, what it does mean is that you have to give Ange another year, right? Because you can't sack a guy that's been the only deliverer of the most valuable trophy in Daniel Levy's tenure, And so park aside the Daniel Levy argument
It's
for a
the
second.
Ten Hag problem. It's a Ten Hag problem, isn't it?
It is a Ten Hag problem. Exactly that, Sim. Right. So park the Daniel Levy thing, but just if Ange was to be given the remainder of the season and in that time goes on to win the Europa League, then that surely means he stays for another year. But for me, I don't think you see anything necessarily that's going to improve in the output next season, because we've seen for the last 18 months, even when we didn't have the injury crisis that we did, and I know Sim's got a load of stats to show on that regard, but the stats without the injuries weren't exactly sensational either way, and we still had some horrendous outcomes. So, like, is winning a Europa League problematic for the Ange out movement?
It depends what way you look at it, sure. I think, do you know what? I think it's more of a problem for when I look at it for Levy out, the movement. And the reason I say that is if we win that and get to the Champions League, we were told that we need Champions League revenue and Champions League money to bring in the players, to pay the wages, to do this, to do that. We've had Champions League regularly and not signed one Champions League elect player at the time. And we've had all the money. We've had all the... If Ange wins a trophy, you can't say anything about it. You can't... Listen, he wins the Europa League. He has brought success, the biggest success in my life. Or obviously, we won it in '84, but I was 5 years old. It's the biggest trophy we would have won in modern history, definitely under Daniel Levy's tenure. It then becomes a problem if he stayed. Have I trust Ange Postecoglou with recruitment? Not really. But is that a Johan Lange thing? Is that a Daniel Levy thing? Because maybe Ange has wanted bigger, better players that we don't know about. But when it's come to the breakdown of the transfer fee, the wages, and it's been, nope, we're not even going to entertain that. This is the list you've got. We'll do this. But what I'm looking at now with the Europa League is we're talking about the fitness of the players. We're hearing Destiny's coming back and these players are coming back. If I was Ange Postecoglou, I would rest them as well. I wouldn't even play them against Manchester United like Destiny. I'd try and keep them wrapped in cotton wool and keep them, because the Premier League season's done. No matter where we finish, we're not getting seventh. We're not getting Europe via that method. It's about keeping those players
You need match fitness, though.
But then you can manage their minutes nearer the time, can't you? We did this with Van der Ven against Augsburg, and then he's out for 3 games for whatever reason. If Destiny, let's say Destiny and Van der Ven, and then 2 weeks later Romero's fit, I'd rather wait a few more weeks for the games just before the Euro. Keep them training, up their intensity, maybe some games behind closed doors. So when it comes to the regularity of Europa League, they go, right, wallop, in they come. All they come, and then we see. Because you know what's been happening with us, whether it be because of Ange's training, whether it be bad luck, whether it be freak ones like Vicario that you can't explain, it happens in games of football. Do we risk that happening when they come back and then they're out of the Europa League game or games, let's hope? So that's another question you get to when it comes to this. If we had Van der Ven, Romero and Destiny fit for Man U, I wouldn't play them. I wouldn't.
Brian, can I ask you, so you say if we win Europa League, he probably saves his job. Is that regardless of league form from now? Like, let's say we lose every game, we stay up on the final day by the skin of our teeth and win Europa League. Is he still in a job next season?
I personally wouldn't. Because, like I said, and it wasn't, and it's not because it is only because I don't trust the players he's brought in and the recruitment. That could be him, that could be Lange. I don't understand some of the transfers that have come in, the way they're done. So I don't know, with Champions League money, if we've got a recruitment team and these players that will come to play in an Ange Postecoglou system or whatever it may be. So I think Tottenham need a complete refresh.
Wait, so Brian, let me change the question then for you. If we have a great,
have I got to choose a button? Have I got a button?
No, 2 buttons. No, I'm joking. Let me rephrase it then. Let's say we have a great end to the season. This is just you, not the club. If we have a great end to the season, we win our last 10 games or something, right? And we win the Europa League. Is that enough for you to say, actually, I'm going to give him another season?
No.
For you personally. So nothing at this point, nothing can save, for you personally, nothing can save him at this point.
Because go on, you go, Sean, you speak. Go on, buddy.
No, I just want to know his opinion,
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so well, the only reason I say this is obviously injuries have been a problem for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
We've had this issue. Obviously, this year is a lot more severe than last time. The way we play football, I mean, you look at it now. We used to be attacking. Yes, we wanted it to be a bit more pragmatic, but even when we've needed to attack recently, i.e. Liverpool and other games, we just don't do it anymore. We just don't do it. When Nuno Espirito Santos had a game, or he had 3 in the end, where we didn't have a single shot on target, the meltdown was absolutely horrific, like everywhere. And I was part of that because I don't accept that. Yet here we are, and it's just barely mentioned, like on the day of the game and then afterwards, and then not mentioned again. I just don't see. And the worst thing about it is other teams know what to do now. It's clear that whatever Ange Postecoglou does and he sticks to it, that it only takes a few weeks. One team will do it, and every team will go, right, we know how to beat Spurs.
No, but I'm saying, okay, that's what's happened. But I'm saying if he was to turn it around, we get the players back, we go on a great run of form, and we win Europa League. That's not enough for you.
No, because I'm saying the same thing will happen again next season. With the style of play, people will work out how to play us because he plays one way, and he will stick to it. They'll work it out. We'll be in the same situation. I just can't see. Don't get me wrong. If he could turn it around, brilliant. If he was given the time and he turned it around and proved me wrong, absolutely delighted to hold my hands up and go, Joe, I've got it wrong. But I just can't see.
But you're saying even if he did, you would still sack him though.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
saying this season.
You're doing a very good job of parking him into a corner.
I'm saying for the rest of this season. But Simeon, if you actually believe. And it's all well and good saying, if he was to win the last 10 games of the season, win the Europa League. It's not going to happen.
I'm just giving hypotheticals. I'm trying to see you're saying it's not going to happen. If he won Europa League, if he had a bad end to the league season, he would still sack. I'm just trying to see if there's anything he can do to keep him in a job in your eyes.
No, I always stand by. I just can't see. Like I said, he'll get figured out. Injuries will start again next season. We'll still be in Europe if we win the Europa League, according to your hypothetical thing, and then we're playing Champions League.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll need Champions League players to come in, and that's a Levy thing, to pay the higher money, to pay the higher wages. We've clearly
Brian,
seen.
Do you agree with me, Brian, that Daniel Levy might be in a position now where because of the pressure that I think a lot of what you're doing and people like you who feel the way you do. I don't personally subscribe to this notion that it will result in what you want, but at the very least, a byproduct of it is an effort to make more of an effort with regards acquisition of talent. Do you subscribe to the same notion that you might see a player or maybe two that kind of that go that extra mile, where you might see £70 million plus spent on one player and a new highest earner of the club?
No, maybe 70 million. You got to remember, we smashed our transfer record for Solanke. He's on lower wages than what Dembele was on.
We didn't really smash it, did we? We eked over the line. It was.
We know, but I'm saying
marginally higher.
We might pay a record transfer fee, but I doubt we'll smash the wage bill, because this is what we've been doing. And I just don't listen, Sean. As much as I'd love to say, do you know what? Maybe this year, but do you know how many times I've gone in and heard this window? This is the one where Spurs could attack the market. This is the window where Spurs have got the advantage. This is the window that Spurs are going to go in and make a difference. And then we go make that one early signing. And then the rest of the window is just buzzword bingo and nonsense. And then we end up going, we at least we tried. I just don't believe that Daniel Levy has any desire to pay the top wages, or not even the top. I'm not talking the 300 grand a week. Parity with Son, maybe a little bit higher than Son. It's there to be done, but I just do not believe, and I've had 17 years of being the way I am, to see on footballing matters things improve with the quality of player and everything. And do you know what it is as well, Sean? Whilst we're talking Levy, people know my shtick.
We've got a topic. We've got a topic about Levy.
All right, so I'll save it for there. I'll save there. But in answer to your question, Sean, I do not see Spurs doing it. Maybe the transfer record, like they did with Solanke. Yes, the wages.
Not a wage record.
Hell no.
Okay, fair enough.
Sean,
Fair enough.
so Sean, same question that we gave to Brian.
What was the question?
About if does Europa League for you save Ange's job?
I think it has to. I do think it has to. I think if you win the highest profile trophy in Daniel Levy's tenure, I think that you have to shake hands with that. Which, what will be interesting is that what I do find interesting is that the Europa League has so much more caliber, so much more kind of gravitas and brownie points or whatever you want to call it. But the pathway to having success in it will likely be far easier than what we would have had to face to get to the Carabao Cup final. To take on and beat both Manchester teams, and then obviously Coventry, and then we did really well in the first leg against Liverpool. Shame we didn't have the same gusto in the second leg. If we had found a way to get past them to take on Newcastle or Arsenal, if you found the way to lift that cup, and then or otherwise it doesn't matter, but then you go to the Europa League. It depends depending on the draw. I mean, Tottenham are second favourites, despite all of our injury problems, all of our youth process, and yet it will come with far higher accolades than what happened in 2008. But ultimately, the rubber meets the road with just how the optics look. If you lift the Europa League, whether you're an Ange in or an Ange out, I think that you should have to shake hands with the reality that Daniel Levy will be absolutely delighted with getting that sort of monkey off his back, right? And to do it in the Europa League and to get back into the Champions League, where you're going to pick up minimum 50 million quid, which is really important to Daniel Levy, even though if you actually look at the numbers, when you pick up 500 million plus circa average revenue and you're guaranteed 50 million quid, give or take, from the Champions League, that's 10% of revenue from qualification into a tournament, which is significant, but nowhere near as big as it used to be. When we used to be 350, 400 million revenue, then it was more like 18, 19, 20%, right? And so to Daniel Levy, who is a numbers guy and a bean counter, whatever you want to call him, that is a reason to be super happy with Ange Postecoglou's output if that was to manifest. But also just from a fan perspective, anybody that would say, despite that, Ange isn't the guy, I think it would be very unreasonable. So
is that regardless of how the league form goes? Like, does the league form also have to improve a bit, or does that regardless?
Absent relegation. But like I say, if Tottenham are flirting closer to relegation long before we get to, I mean, we're only in the last 16, and that doesn't happen until March. If you were to lose the next 3 games before whoever we play in the last 16, then I'd be surprised if Daniel Levy, especially if the performances are also something similar to what you saw in the Liverpool game, where as much as I know you defended it, as much as I also understand that it's Liverpool, best team in the world, at home, under the lights, all that, I get all that. But if you were to see something against Manchester United that was also abject at home, and the Levy out thing is banging around the stadium for 90 minutes, I'm not sure who we're playing after Manchester United in the schedule. But
Ipswich,
if you were to see that, who was it? Sorry,
Ipswich.
Well, okay, fine. Yeah. So if you were to lose and it's a terrible performance against United, and then you also happen to put in an Ipswich who are likely to go down, take 6 points off you this season, I think that the decision will be made before the next time we play in the Europa League. But so yeah, absent a relegation or something that's getting there, then if we're hanging around where we are, or we improve marginally, but the form in the Premier League is up and down like it has been, then I think the Europa League will be enough to keep him in a job for the next, at least for the better part, for the first half of next year. And if things don't improve materially, then he'll be out before Christmas.
He will stay in the job if he wins the Europa League, but the reality is the jury will still be massively out from a lot of fans, including myself. And it'll be probably the kiss of death. One day Ramos won a trophy, lost his job the next season. George Graham won a trophy, lost his job the next season. Pochettino got to a Champions League final and lost his job the next season as well. So, I mean, he probably will lose his job in the following season.
The form, funnily enough, Ben, is not dissimilar, right? In the Champions League final year with Tottenham, our league form was horrendous, right? Yeah. And obviously in the start of the season after, it was awful, right? And
it was
same
the away
with Eric
form,
Ten Hag,
wasn't
right?
it? We went almost a year without an away win. in that final like calendar year.
Yeah,
of
but
botch.
it just shows the difference now. We're talking about us being horrendous, but we finished fourth that year and got to a Champions League final.
How long can we go without a home win?
I only thought it was 2 months when I spoke to Simeon, and then
3
Simeon
months
corrected me. It
since
was
a
3
home win.
months.
3 months since a home win is just.
It's not on.
I don't think I've ever seen us go 3 months without a home win. Has that ever happened for us in the Premier League era?
I would highly doubt it. Seriously, I would highly doubt it under any manager, any of them, including Christian Gross.
It's mental. It's absolutely mental. 3 months without a home win, and we've played the likes of like Leicester and Wolves and stuff at home.
Ben, can I ask you? I know you're playing host tonight.
Go on.
Sorry,
Let me just say. I think if he does win, I think I was not surprised, but I do think if he wins Europa League, I think, and especially if our league form improves on top of that with the players coming back, I think he would have proven that the injuries were the source of the issue with our current form. If he was to come home and finish the season with the European trophy, and obviously if our league form was to improve, I think he would be justified in a lot of what he's been saying, and in my opinion. That's where I kind of land on that. Obviously, it'll be an interesting discussion. Let's say he gets to a final, and let's say the league form really improves. Let's say we go on some really good form, and he gets to a final but loses the final. Be interesting to see what the club do in that situation.
But judging by what you've seen so far this season as a whole, do you really believe that we can go and get to the Europa League final? Do you believe that
if we play like we were playing before the injury, before the crisis, I do think we can have a good crack at this Europa League. Genuinely,
you think we can actually go and win it? I just can't.
I don't know about winning it. There's some good teams there. Bilbao's a good team. Lazio a good team. Winning it is look. There's as much as people want to bemoan the quality of Europa League, whatever. It's still you have to be a good team to win that competition. And
why aren't those teams a bit stronger favourites than Tottenham at the moment? Is that just because of the weight of money that comes from
just the names,
British fans?
Yeah, probably just the name Tottenham. Like we're just a big club in who I thought aren't we? Who's the favourite then? Who is the favourite?
Manchester
Is it not
United.
Tottenham? Really, they're the favourites now.
I thought we're
Yeah.
above United in the odds. Are we not?
May have been, Ben, but before the decline.
Last time I looked on Betfair, it was a dry market, to be honest. It doesn't take a lot of money to move it at this stage of the competition, but
United are now slight favourites.
What
yeah.
did you want to ask, Sean?
yeah, I wanted to. I know Ben, you're playing host today. I asked Ben I asked Brian at the start. Who if Ange out, then who? And he said Thomas Frank. What would you like to see? And same question to Sim. I know Sim's out, obviously Ange in, but like if he does go, what do you want to see Tottenham do next?
Yeah, I'm like you a bit, Sean. I really want to see Pochettino back at the club, but I just don't think that's going to happen until after the World Cup. So you kind of got an 18-month period where you need to find someone. And I do think Pochettino will be back at the club at some stage. I just don't know when that will be. I think I like Thomas Frank. I like Marco Silva. I like Iraola. I like these kind of managers, but probably Iraola would probably be my number one choice. If not, I really like Marco Silva because I think Marco Silva is a very adaptable manager.
What about the talk of Inzaghi? There's talk
I heard
of him
that
leaving
yesterday.
Inter. You wouldn't want him, or you don't think he would come? It's not realistic.
I don't think he would come.
But would you want him?
I don't know too much about Inzaghi. I'd need
Very
to do a
similar
bit
to
more
Conte,
research.
essentially.
So probably not then.
You wouldn't want him.
Well, he scored. I think last season for Inter, didn't he craft a team that conceded the fewest goals and also scored the most?
I'm saying he's a very good. Conte's a great manager as well. I think he's better than Conte in Europe. I think obviously he got to a Champions League final, didn't he? And they were very good, I thought, against City.
Yeah, I
in that
need
final.
to do a bit more research into Inzaghi. I don't know too much about him.
I think he's been
what
brilliant for
his philosophy
Inter.
is, what kind of positionals.
He's like a bit
plays.
more offensive Conte, but still kind of back three. Make sure the defence are solid, but he is a bit more free flowing than Conte.
But will
So your
Daniel
choice-
Levy hire another passionate?
I mean, I'd like him,
Italian-
but I don't know if it's I don't know if the narratives will precede him. He'll come in with this narrative of he's an Italian manager similar to Conte, and people just use, whenever we lose a game 1-0 or something, people use that stick to beat him with. I'm worried about that, but I like him. I liked Conte, obviously, but I like Inzaghi. I think he'd be a great coach, but it would be, again, another major departure from what we have. So it's going to be another,
The pendulum can't swing back for me.
Yeah,
it has to,
it's going to be
it has to-
swinging.
It has to dial it back 10%. But like in politics, when the mainstream are advocating change, this time it's for different, this time it's for permanent, whatever. But then nothing really ever changes in the horseshoe of politics. It takes someone, generally speaking, to come out and advocate for wild changes. That's what populism is. That ultimately doesn't land too far from the norm anyway. And so I think that Ange was the necessary cog in a pivot away from what Tottenham have been, a flip-flop in the strategy and the formation and the philosophy. But Ange was a necessary cog. I just think that particular sail has now lost its wind. And I don't want to see us pivot back to someone that's pragmatic. I want to see us to continue to have some sort of vein in that regard, but just a little bit more dialed back than the kind of gung-ho stuff that we've seen at times from Ange in the last 18 months.
Well, sure, it's another thing. There's a manager who's sitting on the sidelines right now, probably sitting on his hands and knees, begging for that itch to get back involved in top-level football in the Premier League, who's currently sitting in a sporting director's role out in Germany, who maybe is not Terzic.
Oh, not Terzic.
Not Terzic. This guy is he's thinking, he's been out of the game for a year now. Could he be missing it too much?
Oh, Nagelsmann.
What about Jurgen?
Oh, Jurgen Klopp. Yeah, I'd give my left. I'd probably give my left testicle to have him in. I think he'd be fantastic. But he's one of those guys that if you're not a Liverpool fan, he is. You hate him, right? You hate his big teeth. You hate that smile. You hate that. You hate him because he's so good. But if he was donning the press conferences in those brilliant Sadice chairs that you guys are macking over there, then you'd soon fall in love with him, wouldn't you? He's incredible.
There's not even a 0.5% chance of that happening.
Mate, it's not even 0.000.1. There's no chance.
I think he even said he would never take another Premier League team. Managers say a lot of things, but when they're out of a job and they want to get back into it and they see an opportunity, life's short. That's the reality. You never know.
My God, Simeon, you really have gone from one side. You've gone from one side of let's keep Ange to now let's try and entice Jurgen Klopp. No, yeah, I mean, Sim.
One thing I will say, Premier League manager of all time.
One thing I will say on this, and it's another.
How much would it take? How much would it take to get him?
Write a number down, Jurgen.
25 million? 25 million a year? Would you pay 25 million a year?
30.
The other thing you've got to remember with this is, and Sean and I have also discussed this and agreed with this, is whoever next comes in, whenever it may be, Tottenham Hotspur have got to pick a lane and stick to it. Stop going with the young, the old, the attacking, the defensive, the pragmatic, the build, the projects, the win now. Pick a lane and stick at it. And if you are going to bring in another manager, bring it in with someone who's got similar ideas, maybe slightly varied, like Sean said, but you can't keep changing the style of football, especially after a certain someone said after Aston Villa or in his final season programme notes, we're going to stick to the Tottenham way, whatever that may be. And then when it goes on to hire 3 defensive managers, then an attacking one. As and when
Ryan, do you think there's any chance, right? Like, I think Jurgen Klopp is a bridge too far. But money does talk, right? Let's be honest. Money does talk. Is there any chance? First of all, I don't even know if you rate the geezer, but someone like an Eddie Howe, right, who's a little bit hamstrung right now by Newcastle United.
I would take Eddie Howe
playing within the rules of FFP. You'd have to pay him 2, 3, 4 times more than he's getting at Newcastle. Is there any chance? Even if tell me A, if you rate him or not, but B, if you do, is there any chance that money, if you were to pay him Conte money, would you be okay with Eddie Howe coming into Tottenham?
In a heartbeat.
Okay.
Yeah,
boys,
Eddie
how
Howe.
about you, Benenson?
I like Eddie Howe.
I would love Eddie Howe. And I liked him when he left the Bournemouth role, and I like him even more now seeing him at Newcastle. He's got varied ways of playing. He can play in that low block system as well, and when he's up against it, he can play high pressing.
Master of shithousery as well, right, Ben?
All of you would have sacked him last season.
Master playing the game.
Yeah.
All of you might have sacked him last season, though.
Do you know what? And I keep telling Ben about this. I made myself sick the other week and I watched the Newcastle documentary again. And it makes me sick watching that. If we had owners and you watch that documentary and see how they wanted Eddie Howe to succeed and whatever, you'd stand by him. Eddie Howe.
Wait, what
I-
owners are you talking about? Are you talking about the Newcastle owners that
Yeah,
aren't
the
prepared,
Newcastle
even though they're
documentary,
$600 billion PIF fund, and they're not prepared to put in the 1.2 billion it's going to cost to redevelop St James's Park? Those
I'm
owners.
talking about when they appointed Eddie Howe, Sean, and how they've stuck with Eddie Howe and what they did to get Anthony Gordon, and how they spoke. I mean, we'll talk more about our hierarchy in a minute, but you just see it, and Eddie Howe has the full backing from that ownership, and they will do what it takes.
Does he have the full? I'm not sure he does, mate. I'm not sure he does.
I think he does.
If
Maybe
Chelsea
not the director of football, but the owners, yeah.
Hasn't he been hamstrung by PSR though?
Correct.
Yeah, he has. But let's just matter of fact stuff here. Newcastle Newcastle, Chelsea, and City have created a little cabal within the ownership model that are dissidents away from the Premier League rules that the other 15 clubs are all on board with. They've managed to get in El Naswari and the Aston Villa guys to join that dissent, because they don't want a tightening of the rules around FFP and PSR and all that stuff's up in the air anyway. To the point where the PFA, who's funding them, by the way, that was interesting, who's scratching who's back there, they've even blocked this notion of anchoring, which is a movement towards a more, not just a sustainable future, but a leveling of the playing field. But Newcastle United are, if Chelsea can find 17 loopholes in which to sell their left toe to their right toe and lease it back over the last 18 months, and Manchester City are probably, in all likelihood, not that we know, but judging by the fact that they spent £200 million more than all the other Premier League teams put together in January, they're probably looking at either an extreme level of confidence or a known fact that they're getting away with 115 charges, of which, if you've read that 100-page dossier, which I have, that was on Twitter in the summer, then to me it's incredibly crazy if they do get away with it. It's madness with the associated party transactions. But all of that stuff to one side, Newcastle United have got as many loopholes as there always have been to circumvent the rules, and yet they don't do it. And then when it comes to their willingness to invest in a $1.2 billion pound stadium that is going to cost to move St James's Park 100 feet to the left, the other side of in that park that's on the side of their stadium, and they're not prepared to do it. I'm not sure if Newcastle United's owners are quite the incredible opportunity that Newcastle fans thought they were going to be with regards profligate spend that has been seen in the past by Manchester City's owners, the Abu Dhabi Group, and by Todd Bowley and the Clear Lake Capital Group, who are massive beneficiaries of a very unique set of circumstances that afforded them with regards to taking over from Chelsea after Abramovich was forced essentially to leave England after the Russia-Ukraine war. So I'm surprised. I'm really surprised that Newcastle haven't done more in the way of circumvention, other than doing some kind of let's inflate the prices of a couple of youth team players and trade them with Villa, trade them with Everton, trade them with Chelsea like they did last summer. That's the only example that Newcastle have done. And other than that, Eddie Howe has been really hamstrung by PSR, as you say, Ben, correctly. But why? But why are Newcastle playing the game, but Chelsea and City don't? It's and Villa as well. I mean, look at Aston Villa, right? They got a 96% wage to revenue ratio, which only really matters if they have three seasons in Europe because of the 70% European wage to turnover ratio rule, and yet it didn't make any sense. And then you got to go, oh well, hang on a second, what's happening now? What's happening in the future? Oh, that's right, Saudi Arabia have come in and bought John Duran for 72 million, giving them a 68 million pound net profit. So you understand why Villa are doing it. You didn't see it at the time, but obviously it became fact after the fact. But Newcastle haven't done the same thing, and it's a head scratcher for me. Like, they're the team that could probably do it the easiest, and yet they haven't. So I'm not sure if Eddie Howe has been backed by their owners, and I think if you're a Newcastle fan, you're probably a little bit frustrated by their owners, if I'm entirely honest.
I want to move on to the last topic, but just before I do, I just want to know what Sim is thinking about his. Is there any sort of situation where you would be Ange out before the end of the season?
Yeah, if we go out the round of 16, and the form, obviously the league form is still what it is, I think there's no point keeping him. We know he's going to go at the end of the season, so you might as well just look. I'm, at that point, I'm not saying you have to sack him now. At that point, I'm like, you might as well. Like, I don't really see that you can get rid of him, and maybe just get Mason into the end of the season. And it doesn't really make a difference. But right now, I think the best course of action is to keep him. But yeah, if
we go out the round of 16, but the league form does take a little bit of an upturn, would you want to keep him?
If it takes a bit of an upturn, you might as well let him see it out. What's the difference? What changes? You might as well let him see it out.
But you'd want him sacked at the end of the season.
Yeah.
So we're 2 losses away from Simbi and Ange out.
There's a timeline.
1 tie loss. The roads are leading there. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, people.
Well, we're going to beat United in Ipswich. It's all good. We've got 1 game a week. We've got players back. Come on. It's Ange time. It's Ange full time.
Slowly coming.
Look, the reality is, I'm not. We went out the cups, and that was what he was hanging his hat on that. I was hanging my hat on that. I knew it was going to be difficult. Obviously, when I spoke about the cups, I was hoping and assuming, given the reports, that we would have the likes of Van de Ven, Romero, and some other players back for these games. Didn't happen, and that led to the defeats and the bad performances, and that's why we're out. And I'm gutted by it. And of course, that's a strike against him. There's no other way of looking at it than a strike against Ange. But for me, I still think we might as well give him that Europa League campaign.
How many strikes does one man need?
1 more.
Just before we actually move on to this Levy stuff, I just wanted to get Brian and Sean's quick opinion on Romero. Do you reckon is there something fishy going on in the background? Is he going to turn out for Argentina next month in the internationals? We saw him back in training, like, what was it, 3-4 weeks ago now? All we've heard, he's a slow burner, but the reality is, since taking shots at the board, we haven't seen him. Do you think no smoke without fire, or what do you reckon, Sean?
I'm not a subscriber to this notion that we're hiding injuries from the press because of the backlash or whatever. But I do think that there's definitely it's fishy, isn't it? It's not just him, right? It's Van de Ven as well. Like, what's going on there? He was supposed to be back, then he's not back because it's a slow bleed. We're slowly bedding him back in. Why do you play 45 minutes and then you don't see him in the next game against Elfsborg?
It's 3, Sean.
So Sean, we're not hiding them. We might be concealing them. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying there's a conspiracy, but I wouldn't be surprised if something fishy was going on. What that looks like, I don't know. But yeah, and in terms of Romero, his injury was from if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it? He kicked someone's foot.
Who, Romero?
Is that right? Yeah, was that what he wasn't? He kicked someone's foot, didn't he? That was the last time we saw him, right?
Yeah, I think actually, so he injured his toe for Tottenham. He then played, I think, against Ipswich 90 minutes after coming off, I think, 2 games in a row. He went off 45 at half-time, I think, or very early on for 2 games in a row. He then played 90 minutes against Ipswich, then went into international duty and aggravated it for Argentina.
That's right.
I think in the first game. And then since then, we haven't seen him since not true, because he came back against Chelsea after he recovered from the toe injury, then picked up a calf injury 5 minutes into the Chelsea game, or 15 minutes
15 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and listen. People think that I protect Daniel Levy from every criticism. I really don't. I spent 3 hours on Sabba's channel yesterday, and I criticised him more than I gave him credit. But I don't think Daniel Levy is as spiteful as to sit there and watch his team struggle as he is, and watch us have to play defenders out or midfielders out of position. Because he called out the club. I wouldn't go that far, Ben. But I think that there's something odd happening.
Sean, there is rumours. This is completely unsubstantiated. There's just such things that have floated around ITK circles.
like my transfer videos that I make up as I go along.
Exactly. I even got a text saying that this is the case, that the Van de Ven and Romero are in kind of not rushing to come back, in a sense that they don't really want to come back and play. Like, they don't want to get re-injured. Like, they're kind of... I guess the rumours are that they don't want to play under Ange. They're not.
Every player wants to play, mate. Every player wants to play football. I don't subscribe to it. I think it's. I think we're in the world. We're dealing with the realms of. It's as crazy as people rooting for relegation.
Well, you have no doubt that Romero will be fit and proper for that Argentina game in a month's time.
For sure. That's just a common theme there. That's just his priorities, right? The same with Richarlison. It's always, country before club with some of these South Americans.
Brian, do you think there's any smoke without fire?
No, I don't think there's always smoke where there's fire. I think what I'd like to see Spurs, he's blatantly going to go to Argentina. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But Spurs should act like these big boy clubs do and say, right, you play him 45 minutes, if that, and then he's coming home for the second game, and put some pressure on them to say, right, we need to protect this asset. I don't think there's any coincidence whatsoever. It's obvious that you speak out against a club like this, there is
repercussions.
Thank you. I could not get that word out.
I heard you say it.
So do you think Levy's preventing him coming back into the team?
Mate, I don't know if it's with just Levy. I don't know if it's Romero. And there's literally whether Romero... I know, we all know that Romero has come out and openly said he loves this club. He loves this club. He loves this club. His kid was born here. He loves it. And kind of like what Harry Kane said, kind of along the lines, I want to see this football club progressing. I want to see this football club have a plan of action to go forward. And there isn't one. There hasn't been one for years. So at his age, especially when a Real Madrid or a Barcelona are sniffing around, for anyone, but especially South Americans, as we know. And I don't think there's no smoke without fire. And I hope to see Romero back in the Spurs shirt this season. But I think it will be the last time we see him in a Spurs shirt, because this summer, Arrivederci, ciao, bye-bye. He will move to a bigger club. And then it will be forced upon the youngsters, like your Ashley Phillips, your Dragusins, your Grays, because we will not reinvest that money in the pure quality to replace him. Like we did with Richarlison with Kane, the replacements have been already bought.
Well, we signed Solanke.
He's out. Oh yeah, forgot about Solanke. Solanke and Richarlison in since Kane. We always bring in the replacements before they. Or Solanke was after, but the quality. I think Romero's out of here. Come the summer, completely out. And
would you swap Romero for Mark Gahey?
I love Guehi. I think he's a fantastic defender. I think we should, if this PR stunt that they tried was legit, they would have tried this before the window or as the window was opening, like Liverpool did with Virgil van Dijk all those years ago, because that deal was never going to get done in the last weekend with Crystal Palace. It was never going to happen. It was a PR stunt like this club does. But I think Guehi is a tremendous defender. I really, really like him. If he was to come in English, I all day long. All day long.
All right, moving on to the final topic. You'll like this one, Brian. Spurs made 2 signings yesterday, finally got them over the line. Beyonce for 2 more nights at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and also Kendrick Lamar and SZA are performing at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So the best in class, the best talent the world has to offer is coming to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, as well as, I think Chisora actually said after his fight, I wanna fill out the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. You have no doubt that's going to happen.
So it's not all world-class talent then.
Not all, but
he'd make a good 6, Chisora. I think.
Our fans. So there was obviously massive outrage about this on social media and stuff about these kind of announcements coming after a game like Aston Villa the morning after. Brian, do you think fans are well within their right to get as angry as they're getting after seeing these kind of announcements?
I think the world knows my answer to this one. Yes, in fact, I wish there was more anger and outrage. You've also forgot to mention on transfer deadline day when they officially announced Beyonce, but then had to remove the tweet immediately after because of the outrage. It's been immediate. Ben, it was like you said yesterday. You've just got out of 2 cups. There's been media silence from the Spurs side. And the very first thing they do next day, and I understand what Sim said as well, that they're probably pre-planned. But you could even pre-planned it to say a couple of days after. But we don't know what the results are going to be. We know what the mood in the camp will be. I've started saying with this so-called game-changing stadium that was going to change how we approach things and do things. It hasn't been game-changing. It's changed the game. And what I mean by it's changed the game is the quality is now invested in the NFL, the boxing, the F1 experience, the quality of talent that comes to perform inside the stadium. And as I've said, I wish that stadium was used every single bloody day, apart from match day, to generate revenue, to get this
Not what you
club
used
to
to
where
say,
it needs
Brian.
to be. But it does not go back in. It does not. And the way that they do not read the room, they do not care. They just do not care about these fans are, and I class myself as a massive one of these within the Levy out camp. They just don't take any consideration into how the client, how the client feels anymore. I'm furious, as are others, obviously. The way they do this thing with just not a care in the world for how the supporter feels is just unacceptable. Unacceptable. And in answer to your question, was it right for the fans to be outraged? I wish it was more. I really do.
Sean, I can see you shaking your head over there. And do you not think that from like a PR standpoint, from the looking at the fans, and after going out 2 cups and with such a whimper, and you're looking at the state of the squad at the moment with the injuries and stuff, do you not think it is a bit of a PR disaster to announce that literally the morning after going out the FA Cup?
Yeah, the problem with that sentiment is I'm 99% certain of this reality, but I'm not 100% because I don't know. I can't clarify right now the rules regarding companies that are essentially share listed, but do not necessarily have a share price on the alternative investment market. But for those that do, if you have a revenue and a needle moving announcement, especially if that ability to generate revenue from the announcement has to take place, i.e. tickets going on sale on this date, in the case of Tottenham and Beyonce, then they have a requirement by law to announce them when they are signed. Right? So as much as I can empathize with this notion that the timing is sometimes unfortunate, facts don't care about your feelings, especially if you are someone who happens to, no disrespect, Brian, but when you said like you're an advocate now, and I love you to pieces, mate, so this is not a personal attack, but like when you say you're an advocate for Tottenham using, and a lot of Levy outers have moved the goalposts on this.
I always have been since the stadium was generated.
You haven't, mate. You haven't, bro. I remember being on the Irish Hotspur with you way back when I first started out in this community. You know, I remember deadline day, the day before. I remember the announcement of projects and processes and revenues. And you weren't, and it's not against you because there's so many people in the Levy out movement who used to be, we don't give a F about this, that, and the other. Focus on Tottenham, Daniel Levy, this, that, and the other, right? But as soon as the argument became, hang on a minute, the generation of revenue that is not on the shoulders of Tottenham fans that allows you to compete, put aside how you spend the money or whether Daniel Levy has the appetite to go deep or go big or whatever else. But as soon as the argument was made clear that these are, first of all, diversifications away from the responsibility of Tottenham fans to generate every other penny or pound that the club can make to go on the transfers that we do spend. And like I say, you can forget about whether you misspend it, just the generation of the revenue. You and so many others that I know were critical of this notion. It was, we're a multi-arena. We're not a football club anymore. We're a multi-sports arena. I remember, let's look at the Tottenham website. Let's look at the Tottenham website, right? It says, by the way, we're also Tottenham Stadium. All of this stuff, and you might still stand by it, Brian, but the goalposts were moved after the argument became settled science around the fact that it is a benefit to the club that people that are fans of Beyonce or go-karting are putting money into the pocket of the club that goes back into the net spend revenue. Right? People say 46% wage to turnover ratio, and it's unacceptable compared to Aston Villa that are 96%. Well, as I say, Aston Villa are doing things that are, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours later. The reason why Tottenham have 46% but still have a higher wage bill than most other teams, not necessarily relative to turnover or relative to revenue, but those things are because of the revenue that we generate from things that are outside of the pockets of you, me, or any other people that are watching this. If you like go-karts, if you like NFL, if you like rugby league, if you like all those other concerts, those things participate in the revenue stream generation. And the goalposts were moved after the argument was made clear around what the differences were. And to me, not only that part of the conversation is very much necessary to be spoken about, but is overlooked by so many. But on top of that, and again, I'm 99% sure, but I'm not 100% sure because I'm not sure of the detail regarding Tottenham Hotspur, who whilst they have 30,000 micro shareholders, they're not technically listed on the alternative investment market anymore. But as a consequence of the fact that they do have shareholders, I'm pretty sure, very sure, but not certain, that they have to announce those things when the decisions are made. And therefore, the timing might be unfortunate, but it is what it is. And so whilst you can throw your toys out of the pram, everybody who feels that way, and say, it's disgusting, we're prioritizing one over the other, if I'm right, and I'll clarify later when I do my due diligence, then the timing might be unfortunate, but it is what it is. It has to be done when it has to be done. Can I give you an
example of something very quickly, and you can respond to it? So if that was how you, and it could be, because like I said to you, when it comes to financials and the laws and everything like that, you wipe the floor with me. It's never been my forte. I'll never try and get into a debate with you on it because I've just got nothing to add on that side of the things. I speak as obviously a passionate, outspoken fan as opposed to financial. But go back to pre-COVID. So still in the stadium, just as COVID was actually coming in, we were away at Burnley. And it was a 1-1 draw and Dele Alli scored the penalty. When we went 1-0 down, Tottenham Hotspur announced and sent a massive email out to all season ticket holders saying you can pre-book Lady Gaga.
Right.
So was that just announced literally on that day and they had to announce it during a football match? And that's why they announced it then. And this is just because I don't understand.
I'm not talking about, like, the announcement of when you can buy tickets is different to the announcement of when the contract is signed with the artist. Right, they're different things.
But still, putting stuff out.
It's important to know, by the way, just to clarify, it's important to know that all these concerts, Kendrick Lamar, they announced all their tour dates yesterday, not just Tottenham, Villa Park, Cardiff, all these other ones. They announced
there you go.
all together.
That's another interesting point. I appreciate you saying. I thrown you under the bus today, mate. You didn't have to support me there. But look, people in the comment section. I'm looking at the comments. People in the comment section might be like yawning and saying this is all boring, spreadsheets and all that stuff. At the end of the day, I'm just trying to bring you as close to certainty to I am to the rules around how you can do that stuff as a company that still has micro shareholders. Because if you've got a revenue and a needle moving scenario, so as much as you might not be interested in that stuff, if you don't care, you don't have to care. But the facts are the facts, or what I think are facts, and I'm pretty sure they are facts. I just don't know whether or not it still stands true for Tottenham because they're not technically listed on the AIM anymore, the AIM market. But if they are, then yeah, sorry. As soon as you sign the deal, you have to make because it's revenue moving, it's needle moving, and just like with every other publicly listed company, if you're BP, if you're Sky, if you're anyone else, and you sign certain deals at certain times, those things have to be announced within certain timelines. It's just the rules of how shareholder operated companies work. So I'm not suggesting for a second that it's not uncomfortable and that the timing could be better, but I don't believe that it's some like distraction technique. If it is, again, I don't think it is, but if it is, then the club are moronic to do that because you invoke the reactions of people like Brian and people in the comment section that don't care about that stuff and just see it for what they think it is, which is a method to say, well, let's reprioritize what Tottenham Hotspur is. And I think that they're not idiots. They're not idiots, Tottenham. So
can I read you a quote? Can I read you a quote from Donna Cullen in the Financial Times last year when Beyonce was announced? She says, Beyonce was a bit of a tipping point, actually. The stadium operates a bit of a sweet spot in the market in terms of the size and how you can construct it for concerts. So we do boxing, we do concerts, rugby, NFL, visitors, attractions, conferences and events, and we are about to start building a hotel. She doesn't mention that there's a football club there as well.
That's because the conversation's not. It's an assumption, right? I'm no fan of Donna Cullen, by the way. I'm no fan of Donna Cullen. I think that her relationship with
she's a
Daniel Levy is
problem.
Yeah, massive. I 100. I subscribe to that. I want her out of the club. I don't know why she has her oar in with certain things. She's like a PR expert, but she also had her say on the stadium, and the architecture. It's massively problematic. But to answer your question, Sim, she's been asked a question by the Financial Times regarding multi-use stadium arena, and I guess there's an assumption that we're a football club, but on top of that, we also do yada yada yada. So, I mean, look, people will feel how they want to feel. I'm just someone that I try to bring to the attention of people that don't have the resources, the inclination, the interest, or attention on the things that they don't necessarily know or understand or want to, and that they have opinions that are shaped on that ignorance. And so I'm someone that understands that stuff maybe more than the average person. So like, you might hate me for bringing it up because it doesn't suit your narrative, but again, facts don't care about the feelings of people that don't care, right? I think it's important to know these things. I'm not trying to shape anyone's opinion, but you're better off knowing than not knowing, in my opinion.
Yeah, but Spurs did delete the tweet on the deadline day about announcing the Beyonce concerts. So if it was a legal requirement that they had to put something out, I mean, does it have to be on social media? Does it have to be a statement on the website? I mean, what kind of form does that look like? And why did they delete it on the transfer window deadline day if it's a legal requirement?
Well, to add on top of that, Ben, Sean, and this is just to add to it, then you can go, is obviously the last two announcements that they did. I don't even know who Scissors is. It's showing my age and lack of music knowledge. I know Kendrick, but those two announcements, Beyonce and this new one that got announced yesterday with Kendrick Lamar, they didn't put anything on social media. It was only because people received the email. So obviously they're getting a backlash on you. I think they actually.
Sorry, who didn't put anything on social media?
The Tottenham Hotspur Stadium normally announce these things via not on the Tottenham Hotspur official, on Spurs Stadium or the Hotspur Stadium, whatever the Twitter handle is, Spurs Stadium, and they normally announce everything through there. Any event, anything that goes on at the stadium, whether it be the NFL, whether it be concerts, boxing, whatever, they do a press kind of release on Twitter going, hey, let's listen, this is happening. Radio silence on there yesterday. Just Spurs members and season ticket holders and people that are signed up
to the website
or whatever.
And shareholders, right?
Shareholders. Obviously,
I would imagine shareholders received communication.
All released by email. Only nothing mentioned.
I would hazard a guess that part of the delivery of stock sensitive, price sensitive news doesn't have a legal requirement to be delivered via social media. I would imagine that it has to be delivered to shareholders, right? And so therefore you can chastise the club for delivering it on Twitter if you want to.
I've just been messaged by a shareholder who said we received no email.
I received an email as a season ticket holder.
As a season ticket holder, they're saying shareholders, or this one specifically, has just sent me saying I'm a shareholder and never heard anything about it or received an email.
Well, that's hearsay. To be honest, I can't verify or validate that. But all I'm saying is that there is, by law, for traditional stock-listed companies, there's a requirement to distribute and disseminate that information that's needle-moving in timely fashion. That's just the rules. I don't know if it's the same for Tottenham. That's what I'm saying. I'm not certain of the fact, but I would imagine that is. Whether it comes to doing it on Twitter, I'm sure that they don't have to do it via Twitter, right? Maybe that's a faux pas from Tottenham. Maybe, right? Timing of that stuff. But I would imagine that if there is a legal requirement to do so, that every shareholder received an email. Maybe that man needs to check his spam. I don't know. But
you know what it is, well, I mean, we're talking about this, it just detracts away from what's going on the football side of the business, because again, these concerts have been coming in, they've been coming regularly. And what I wanted to say, but when Sim said we've got this section coming up, what I have seen since Leicester or maybe even Everton, the Everton game, I think it was, has been a major swing. Obviously, people know how I stand about it, why I feel about it, how I feel about it, how long, why, everything. The amount of messages I'm getting from people that were not Levy out or undecided, that are now saying, do you know what, I'm fully on board. I've seen this season with whatever it may be, I'm getting countless amount of messages, whether it be reached out to me privately, email, social media, whatever. There are so many more people now. And like I said, everyone has their breaking point. Everyone has had their breaking point, because at the end of the day, whether you're a financial guy like yourself, Sean, that can see these side of things that I don't or whatever, every single one of us, no matter where we stand on any Spurs debate or part of the football club, is we want a successful Tottenham. That's all we want, a successful football club. And I had one person that said, you know what, I gave him a 5-year plan for when we move into the stadium to see things change. And he said, yeah, things have changed. They've got worse.
They have got worse. They have 100%.
And this is the thing. This is where we need to bring it back to. All the concerts that come in. We talk about these concerts, like I said, brilliant revenue coming in, fantastic. Will the manager see a large portion of it and be able to do what he does, whether it be Andrew or anyone? No, in my honest opinion, and I base that on the amount of time I've been Levy out. Will we reach for the stars?
Brian, can I ask you a question? Of course
you can.
You're a staunch Levy outer. As you would have heard on my channel, you messaged me the other day acknowledging it, right? I support you. I support people that want to raise their voice. I always think it's necessary, right? And I disagree is the outcome that you want and how it can be achieved. However, if you want, this is where I fundamentally disassociate myself with anybody that's Levy out that happens to support the idea that trophy success is now a failure and a problem, and also relegation is a part of the solution. I think that stuff is just absolutely madness. As Ben, you said earlier, it's crazy, right? I completely agree. Yeah. But if you were to just zoom out from Tottenham for a split second, do you acknowledge that part of the problem, however big of a factor you think it is, whether you think Daniel Levy is the biggest factor or not, do you associate with the idea that an inability of the Premier League lawmakers to implement a set of rules that prevents the state-backed football clubs from circumventing and finding loopholes galore, because the smartest guys in the room are certainly employed by the likes of Manchester City, the lawyers, right, and Chelsea and et al. Do you support the notion, and I would back it up by saying, for all of the teams that used to be relatively as successful as Tottenham were back in the 90s, 80s, 70s and 60s, that all of those teams that also used to win trophies that no longer do, because there's only 5 teams that win 92% of all trophies in the last 25 years and 3 teams that have won 75% in the last 12 years. If you subscribe to the notion that there's more than just Tottenham that used to be successful that don't, and there must be a reason why it can't just be Daniel Levy's fault. Aston Villa, Newcastle, Derby, West Brom, Leeds, Wolves, etc. Everton, goes on. The list goes on. They were all very, very successful back in the day. They no longer are. And they all changed their owners. And none of them, maybe Newcastle will this time around, but none of them have won anything either since they've changed their owners. Do you at least acknowledge that there are problems with the laws around what is and isn't sustainability, and what is and isn't financial fair play, and what is and isn't a leveling of the playing field, which, for what it's worth, FFP and PSR and the Premier League lawmakers used to say it was all about sustainability. Now it's supposed to be about a balanced and more even output, right? If you acknowledge, if you say, yes, there's a problem there, then why can't you and people like yourself have as much energy, or at least some energy, towards the notion that we as a fan base and those of other teams that want to see more success, less boring outcomes, go towards the Premier League and say, figure it out? Because the only time that there is a direct relationship between fans protesting and immediate outcomes was in the case of the Super League. So why?
Well, also, this, Sean,
last thing I'll say, why can't people like yourself go for it with Daniel Levy, but also say, yeah, he's a problem. He's a bottleneck within Tottenham, but outside of Tottenham, there's just as many problems. And the inability to solve for that is always going to make Tottenham or anyone else have a struggle to compete. And if we can do that and share the same energy or similar levels of energy, then every other team that struggles to win trophies anymore have a better chance of it. But instead of that, you get some people who laugh and ridicule and mock the notion that FFP and PSR was supposed to be a game changer last season and wasn't. And that to me is problematic because it comes across to me like you care more about being right, not you, Brian, but others. You care more about being right than you do what is right. If you really are true to the notion that you want Tottenham to win, then solving for Levy is part of it, but solving for the financial impropriety is another. And there's no energy towards that from Tottenham fans who feel so strongly about Daniel Levy.
Right, so there's a lot to digest there. What I will say with this, Sean, is obviously I am going to speak from a Tottenham part to begin with. Obviously, we know there's a big problem. There's been a big problem, whether it be PSG in France, Roman Abramovich starting it with Chelsea, all these big people coming in and spending this money. These rules have been meant to be a game changer and even it out and whatever. And I agree, football's got wildly out of control with finances. It really has. It's got ridiculous across the world of football, because of these people that have come in. But what I will say, when we've had, since this has come in, when FFP first came in, we heard from Daniel Levy and Tottenham saying, right, we need to get our ducks in a row with this. We need to make sure we're aligned with this. And then when we're aligned with this, we'll be good to go. We will be good to start going and making a dent and competing, because we'll be better off to spend where others can't. Then obviously PSR came out and we got told we had to get our ducks in a row for that one, which we have. And technically, obviously, without going for I don't expect us to go and rival Manchester City and Chelsea and buy these players at ridiculous 100 plus £1 million players and pay 3, 4, 500 grand. I don't want that. I'd love to have that, but I don't expect it.
The only reason they keep doing it, Brian, is because of the impropriety in finance, right?
Yeah, but so Sean, where I will say right now, Spurs are at a level financially. I retweeted what was that report you showed where it said Spurs could spend £250 million this January? I can't Rambles. The Swiss Ramble.
180 million Swiss Ramble, yeah.
But we don't. We have this playing field, but there is calibers of players out there that Spurs can go and get, and literally anyone else that is trying to go to battle with us, we can, unless it's one of those big teams. But the way Spurs handle transfers right now, and you look at it with all this money coming in, the wage bill going down, Spurs are in a position now where we should be able to attack the market. The numbers are out, the revenue is there. Spurs should right now, and I'm not saying reach for the stars and compete with Manchester City, Chelsea, and the ones that can literally just say, right, here's 100 million, 150 million for this one, 100 million for that one. But Spurs now are in a position where they should be moving in or swimming in bigger ponds to get bigger fish, to be able to climb that gap and breach that gap between those clubs, and we're not. We're doing the opposite, in fact.
You're not answering the question, though, mate. You're not answering the question. Why can't you hold the same energy towards the flagrant disregard of rules?
Because I care about Tottenham. Because I care about
if you care about Tottenham, Tottenham does not work in an echo. Does not work in a chamber. It doesn't. It works within an ecosystem that has 19 other Premier League football clubs, of which 3 or 4 are flagrantly disregarding the rules and finding loopholes. Why can't you guys do two things at the same time? Hold Daniel Levy's feet to the fire,
regardless of that, Sean, are Spurs doing everything that they can in their power to even get to those thresholds or even get close to them?
They're doing everything in their power? No. But that's not the. I share your frustration with that.
It is the point. It is the point.
It's not the point.
We're not even doing everything within our power.
Even if Tottenham were to spend, first and foremost, when Brian mentioned that tweet that I put out there was 2 other sub-tweets beneath it that also gave a little bit more context to the reality of the situation, that you don't want to fly too close to the sun like Icarus and burn yourself. Just because you can spend that much doesn't mean you should, right? But you can spend more for 100%. And I echo and share the sympathies and the sentiments of people that are frustrations with that in that regard. But as I said, right, look at the other teams. And the argument, I don't care about the other teams. You should care about the other teams, because all of the other teams that used to be successful that now aren't, just like Tottenham, they've changed their owner. And has anything changed in their pursuit of success? And the answer is absolutely nothing.
Well, I'll say maybe not in to get consistent trophies. I agree with you on that, Sean. But just look at Aston Villa, for example, who you just used them as an example, right? When we got to the Champions League final, they're in the Championship.
Right.
Now they are growing gradually. They've got a higher wage bill than us now, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, to 96%.
And yeah, fine. I don't know about the percentages, but in terms of money that they're spending, that they spend more than us on wages,
right?
Which is not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
But they've also overtaken us in terms of
now they
football
have
merit.
In an isolated moment in time they have. But how many teams have
finished
knocked on
above
the
us
door
last season, and they're above us again this season?
Ben, how many times has that been? How many times have Tottenham finished in top 4 in the last 15 years?
15 years, I don't know, 7, 8 maybe.
Right. How many times have Villa done it?
That's what I'm saying. I'm talking about the last 5 years.
How many? So you're saying that Villa, because
I'm
of
saying that
we're going down,
Villa, and other teams are going up, and they're overtaking us.
By doing what? By spending 96% of their revenue on salary.
Yeah, but sure, we don't have to spend 96%. I'm not asking. We've got revenue we can spend. I'm not.
I know you're not, Brian, but Ben just used an example of a team that is flagrantly breaching above, and then lo and behold, they go. People's going. Everybody who follows football finance is saying, how are Aston Villa doing it? And then they go and sell a player for £68 million net profit that is nowhere near worth that, who's at the start of his career, to Saudi Arabia. And it all makes sense when you kind of go, when last year you were saying, why would Aston Villa join Newcastle, City and Chelsea in the dissidence away from Premier League sustainability measurements? It doesn't suit them until you realise, oh, wait a minute, they've got a 96% spend threshold or a wage threshold that is wildly above. And the only way they can get on the right side in the short term is by having amortization processes that get them back on the right side of the line. And you know what? Aston Villa, if they qualify for Champions League, that will be their 3rd season in Europe in the last 3. They'll have to suddenly adhere to it. If you're not paying attention to what's happening outside of Tottenham, and you care so much about Daniel Levy, I think you're missing so much of the story. It's like dialing into the final of a movie.
I get what you're saying in terms of the percentage that they're paying in terms of their wage to turnover revenue. But look at ours. Aren't we one of the lowest, if not the lowest in the Premier League?
42%. I think it's 42%.
42% or 46%, whatever it is.
At the moment, but 46% at the moment, based on the numbers that include a year of revenue that has gone up. Well, actually, in the last year, it's gone down 6%. But you've also got the absence of Harry Kane, the absence of Ivan Perisic, the absence of Eric Dyer, the absence of Tanguy Ndombele, and by the way, and Lloris, right? But by the way, people say Tottenham dropped their salary bill by £32 million or whatever the number that's banded around. They didn't. They paid off £10 million. They didn't just like Tanguy Ndombele suspiciously is included in the list of why Tottenham's wage bill is suddenly so low, but it's overlooked the fact that we paid him off. So we didn't get it's not 46%. It's £10 million higher than that. Again, suspiciously overlooked by people that don't care about the detail because they have agendas to portray, and that's fine.
Sure,
do what you got to do. I'm not going to sit here. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's nighttime at 4 o'clock. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon because other people want to believe it. It's bollocks.
Sure. Listen, what I will say with that, you look at it again, and the way I look at it, do I think what you're saying, and like I said, with finances, I'm not going to even try and lay a glove on you because it will be a first round knockout. But what I will say is next summer, when we can go and use these advantages that we do have against other teams, whether we're in Europe, not in Europe, Spurs can compete, wages and financially. Will Spurs... If Spurs get, let's just put it in 2 ways. If Spurs get if they win the Europa League and get Champions League football, do I see Spurs going out buying Champions League elect players and paying on par with Sonny or maybe a little bit higher, going above that 200 grand bracket? No. If we don't win Europa and we finish in the bottom half of the table, do I see Daniel Levy saying, do you know what? This was a shit show. We need to buck our ideas up. We need to get back into that European race, let alone top 4 race. We need to spend money big and bring in pay the wages. No, I don't. You're meant to say.
Did we
you're meant
not
to
do
say
that
from a
with
place of
Matisse
strength.
Tell though, Brian? Did we not spend like the reason why we got Matisse Tell was not because we beat them on the draw. Was not because of I mean, partly maybe because Ange Postecoglou got on the phone and did his salesman spiel, but ultimately he wanted to go to Manchester United. Manchester United couldn't afford the £10 million loan fee. Couldn't afford to pay him 100% of his wages.
Yep.
Suddenly we're financially more competent than Manchester United, and you know why? Because Manchester United paid £70 million for Casemiro, paid him 300 grand a week, and then renewed his contract for a 33-year-old or 32, however old he is, because they signed up Rashford. And Aston Villa, funnily enough, the same name comes up and up and up again and again and again. They're willing to pay him 275 grand a week, 75% of his wages. And if they take up the option, you have to pay 100% of the guy's wages, right? It's like I say, feel free to feel how you want. Feel free. I don't care. I'm never trying to change anyone's opinion, but there's information out there regarding why we are where we are. And I subscribe and empathize and share your frustrations with regards however you want to describe it, lack of ambition. I think it's a nonsense adjective that is subjective anyway. But ultimately, Brian, zoom out from Tottenham for a split second, and you're going to see that a massive part of the jigsaw of why Tottenham do or don't have the success that they do or could have is because of the influence of other things. And all I'm asking for is maintain. I subscribe and I support your efforts around holding Daniel Levy's feet to the fire. But if you really mean what you say, which is it's all about Daniel Levy, it's all about Tottenham's success, then why not hold the Premier League to account? Why not hold the lawmakers to account? Because what they are doing or not doing is ultimately why 92% of all trophies since Daniel Levy came in is won by 5 teams and why 75% is won by 2. And if you don't solve for that, you're never going to solve for anything.
What I will say is, well, 2 things I'll say is, first of all, I understand what you're saying about people zooming out looking at the Premier League, but there should be more Spurs fans that are looking at the financial side that should be zooming in and looking at Spurs, because Spurs is the number one thing we want success for.
Well, we'll see what happens on Sunday, right? I hope you guys have 1,000 people marching. I really do. I hope you do. I don't think you will, but I hope you will.
I think Change for Spurs and Jay have done an incredibly good job. And I completely forgot the second part I was going to say now, Sean. Thank you for that. I had something very valid to say, and for the life of me, I can't remember what it is.
It was going to blow you out of the water, Sean. It was going to be that. It was going to be the killer argument.
I was going to lay truth bombs all over the place. Bang, 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 everywhere. I cannot remember for the life of me.
Sim, can I ask you, mate? Because I know how Ben feels. Ben's incredibly Levy out. Sim, are we going to align on this one, or are you going to throw me under the bus like I tried to do to you earlier?
Yeah, 3 against 1.
How do you feel about Daniel?
If you were Anne Chin, I'd be by your side, but unfortunately, you've turned on me. So, no, in all honesty, I think I'm ready for change when it comes to board level. I agree with a lot of the sentiment that we don't do enough at the top to really close the gap or really give ourselves the best chance to compete. And it's been a consistent theme throughout his tenureship, in my opinion. I'm also sympathetic to your argument, Sean, that in this current landscape, we're working within the parameters, whereas other teams are kind of finding ways to circumvent that. And we are kind of hanging our hats on the fact that the lawmakers are going to clamp down on all these financial rules, and teams are finding creative ways to go around it, whereas we're playing within the rules. And if everyone else did, we would be in a much stronger position than we are. And the reality is, you know, City are in the midst of 115 charges and all these different things. They were found guilty on some other aspects, and then were able to avoid any sort of points deduction. Chelsea were, you know, brought into Bowley, and they've kind of found creative ways, 8-year contracts, and they've found creative ways to circumvent the rules. Aston Villa are spending 96% of their revenue, which is something we're never going to do and shouldn't do, to be honest, spend that amount on revenue. So I understand those arguments as well.
50% of our revenue would be spending more than them on wages.
Huh?
If we were to only spend,
that's my point, and we should be doing more. We should be doing more, 100%. We should be doing more, and I think it's right to put pressure on the board to do more, and I think it's right to protest and let them know that you're not happy with the current situation. We know that we're underperforming, and as well, I think a large part of it is we pay the highest ticket prices in Europe or the Premier League, and if you're going to charge that amount, then if you're going to treat us like customers, then we're going to treat you like a product, and that is the reality. And if you're not giving us what I don't know, unfortunately, the reality is football isn't a product, and when you're a supporter and all these different things, you're a supporter for life, and you should be supporting the team. But that is how we're being treated by this board. We're being treated like consumers, so we're going to treat you the same in kind. If you're going to demand the highest ticket prices, we're going to demand on-pitch success, and until you deliver that, we're going to be protesting, and we're going to be demanding that you do more. And I think that's also fair and right from this, because let's be honest, in terms of these ticket prices, they don't need to be this high. Whatever you people want to say, we will have all these different revenue sums. They could afford to subsidise the match fees a bit and lower them so that we're maybe a middle of the range team in the Premier League, not the highest. They're doing it so they can get those extra little bit percentages.
We're not the highest.
We are the highest. Who's higher?
Hang on a second. Fulham have got a stand. Arsenal,
one stand.
Yeah, but why is that stand?
On average, we must be the highest.
Why? Well, on average, we have the best stadium in the world. You're not paying for the outcome; you're paying for the experience. That's what happens with sport. You don't get. It's not like going to the movies.
We're paying to watch our football.
You're paying to experience a game of football in a stadium that incorporates other things. Listen, it is what it is. Like, you can have your problem. I'm not going to die on the hill of the season ticket prices. I'm not. I don't care.
Just ticket prices in general. They're the highest. They're one of the highest.
That's right. The reality is that
£96 in the South Stand for a Category A game. That's ridiculous. £94.
Fulham have the highest season tickets, and in their new stadium, in the new stand. Why? Because they have to pay off the stadium, pay off the stand cost. Right? Arsenal have got higher season tickets, and Arsenal, I believe, have got higher Category A games. I'm not sure. They may have more games.
I think our lowest price ticket is higher than anyone else's. I think.
Yep.
Either way, but you're it's not. Just bear in mind here that you're not paying for an outcome. You're paying for an experience. You're paying for the not knowing, like everyone else does in every other stadium, but you're also paying to experience it in the newest and best stadium in the world. At least that's the way it's described by many people, right? So,
sure. So you got to remember as well is come April, there will be another ticket increase, and then also Levy is going to have to announce his nice big fat bonus he's going to get, and he's the highest paid director or man at the top.
Do you know how much the Crystal Palace chairman gets paid a year?
Well, mate, let me finish. But when Daniel Levy gets his bonus, which he will, because loads of off the field success has been coming, why should Spurs fans? Again, the stadium was made on the basis that we needed it to be able to pay the big wages. I know we got to pay it off, and that part totally understandable. I get with the bringing in, like we said, match day outside events and all these sponsorships and everything. It's all coming in. He'll get a bonus for off the field, but there's no desire, commitment or anything. When all those fans that do go in, like you said, for the experience, all they want to see is a team that is ready to compete for where we should be, where we have been. And we're not doing that. We're not doing that. And then when he announces his bonus, there is going to be absolute, forget what we've had just from announcing concerts. When he announces his bonus, which he will do, and it'll probably be bigger than last year's.
I can guarantee the people that feel the same way that you do are going to go apoplectic. But again,
I think everyone should. I think everyone should.
And that's fine, mate. I'm not going to argue with your opinion on that. But at the end of the day,
I'm all for these events. I'm all for NFL. Yeah. Bring it here. Bring the concert. I'm all for it. But look after the fans as well. Look after the lifeblood of the team. Look after the community that helped build you up to where you are now. And I know that Levy's done a lot.
In what fashion? In what fashion?
Maybe make the prices reasonable for the tickets and look after the fans. I think that should be your number one. You're making all this money from all these events and all these different things. Well, let's be honest, a few percentage points here and there for the ticket prices isn't going to make that much of a difference, in my opinion.
What's the waiting list for a season ticket right now?
I think waiting list is skewed though, because if you get a certain type of membership, you're automatically on the waiting list, and a lot of those don't actually take up season tickets when offered.
Okay, but I don't know what else to say apart
officially it's what, 60,000 or something? I don't know, 100,000.
It's not actually.
But every single season, the season ticket allocation is taken up, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So
But every
I mean,
season,
I don't know what to say.
They're offering them out willy-nilly these days.
But they're always taken up.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know how else to say this in a way that's palatable to people that have got their mind made up. It doesn't. Like, I don't care how people feel. If people want to feel a certain way, it's fine. But like, there's just realities of the situation that are consistent and not in any way, shape, or form questioned or chastised in every other walk of life and in most other football clubs.
I understand that, Sean. Your opinion is that there's a chance to make more money, they're going to do it, and if they can make more money, they will. And what other business wouldn't? That's your opinion, and I get that.
It's demand and supply. It's elasticity of demand.
I understand that, but I think back to what the Bayern Munich chairman said all those years ago. He said, the price of a season ticket for us, if we could make them £1,000 a year, and for us that maybe gets us an extra couple of million or whatever it is. For that season, right? And that's something that we discussed over 5 minutes in a transfer. Yeah, that's a lot of money for the extra fans. So that's why our season ticket prices are more like 300.
Do you know what he didn't say in his analysis of why they don't do that or do that? Is that they have a theme in German football in the Bundesliga and the Zweites Bundesliga and the Drittes Bundesliga. They have a theme that is only that the mirage is only broken for 2 clubs. One of them Bayer Leverkusen, who are owned by Bayer, the family, the pharmaceutical giant. But the rest of them have 51% ownership models, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's a different vibe. It's a different theme in Germany that most German clubs don't succeed as a consequence of. But teams like Munich and Dortmund are the beneficiaries of. Again, like, you have to, if you're going to, like, not you personally, Sim, but like just generally speaking, if you're going to lean into those sorts of comments and quotes, why is it that, Berlin don't feel the same? There's realities to the model that exist in Germany that don't exist in the Premier League. If Tottenham were to pivot to a 51% ownership model, right, whereby you'd have more people on the board that are not necessarily charged with the notion of profit and profit only as the sort of predominant method of success, and you were to have fans on there, I mean, God forbid that would be the case when you have fans like the donut in the chat who sits there and advocates for relegation as a precursor to what he really wants. And the same with cup trophies that were the reason why we had the movement in the first place, and now being a problem. Like, I don't think that necessarily that 51% ownership is a good thing unless every team in the Premier League subscribes to it. And when you can't even, under the guise of financial fair play and PSR, have a model that is even like slightly appearing like it has a level playing field, then God help us if Tottenham were to move to a model that was more fan-centric, because you're never going to appease everybody all the time. And ultimately, unless everybody else plays ball, it doesn't work that way.
I agree. It would probably be a disaster. 100%. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And also, if there are fans out there of the opinion that they don't like the ownership and they're happy to be convinced of change, but they don't want to go out protesting because, what are you protesting for in terms of who's coming in? It could always get worse. These are owners, for better or worse, who do keep the club in a financial stable position and do increase revenues, and we aren't in a position that we're ever going to go under and all these different things. And it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't. I understand that opinion as well, but I also think it's only right that the fans should have their voices heard and the fans should let their displeasure be known, and there should be protests. I agree.
I agree. You've never, Brian, mate. You can advocate for this, right? You're one of the staunchest Levy-outers. Please, tell me if I'm wrong, but have I not, since the day one of me being in this community, sharing a screen with you, have I not always supported your right to protest? Have I not always championed your effort? Have I not always backed the right to protest, and that I think it's a necessary part of the conversation? I just disagree with you on why, and I disagree with you on your determined output. But ultimately, do I not support protests against Daniel Levy?
I listen. I will categorically agree with Sean there. He's always been. Listen, Sean and I started streaming together, and one of the first times he did, I gave myself a concussion from whacking my head over the head with a placemat, a genuine concussion. But listen, Sean and I disagree on a lot of things, football-wise or ownership-wise. But what he's just said is right, and I will say this as well. What I will say. And I made a big thing about this, and I think a message got to you about this, Sean. You look at that Liverpool protest that changed for Spurs and Jay arranged. Yes, it was a Sunday before Christmas. There's a lot of people in YouTube chats, social media world, and everyone saying, I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Now's the time. Hardly anyone turned up. Sean at least went over there. I know for a fact Sean was there. Maybe not to protest, but speak to people, ask people why you do it, blah, blah, blah. Listen, this is the thing. It's...
I'll be there on Sunday. I'll be there on Sunday as well. I'll be over. I'll come over. I'll say hello to everybody. Everyone that wants to have a frank conversation.
It comes to the point. Sean, and I will say, but mainly for me, he has always said that Brian, what he does, blah blah. You know what? People know what I've done, and what I've done with the other people. So it's not just me. I'm not going to go through loads of bloody names, so we'll be here all day. But the people that were at the training ground with me, the people that I stood proudly with outside the training club shop, week in, week out. And a lot of people saying
massive support. Didn't you go 15 days? You went 15 days, right?
16 days. 16 days straight at the changing room, not the changing room, the training ground.
Right? That's effort. Not people that like talk a great game, rock up for 5 minutes at the end of the day, and then go on their various soapboxes and proclaim like they're martyrs and that everyone else is the problem. That's who I have an issue with. Not you, Brian. I think you're sensational, mate. I think you're champion of your cause, and I think you're a brilliant advocate for it. But there's other people that I think are frauds in that regard.
What I will say on the other side of this as well is now, with what Change for Spurs have done, and what with Jay alongside them, what they've done is incredible. The way they've gone about it, the Leicester one was brilliant. The greatest thing I've seen about this is there are more and more people on board, and I'm including YouTube channels. I'm not going to start, but there's loads more people that feel the way that people have felt. And I've always said it doesn't matter, and Sean, you would have heard me say this as well. People know I've been Levy out since Martin Yole, the very second he went. But some people, it could have been hiring Jose Mourinho. Some it could have been the Super League. Some could have been the window Poch got the season Poch got nothing to spend. It could be where we are right here, right now. It's not a case of I told you so. Where have you been? Why didn't you listen to me? Blah blah. It's all about right now coming together. That's all it is. Whether people have disagreed with each other in the past, call people out in the past, it doesn't matter. It's now a case of I've been here for 17 years personally. Taken abuse, some of it warranted, probably with my actions of the way I've shouted and screamed on streams. Maybe some of it isn't. But I've been here, done that, got the T-shirt and everything. But then people that have come on from whatever time it be, welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. This isn't the time for throwing shots at each other. I'm not getting a U-Sean or anything. It's now, I've seen it on Twitter, as Twitter does. Twitter is what Twitter does. It doesn't matter how people feel about each other right now, or any spats or whatever. It's about coming together. I tried to fight many battles, and we won some. The group I proudly stand with, and still do what we do. But we need numbers to win the war, and the numbers are coming. So this is why Sunday is so massive.
Whether you are coming, people.
Whether you are going on the march, which I urge anyone that can get to the ground beforehand to do so.
There's a sitting protest, I believe.
The bigger the numbers that we get there, it's exposure. You saw how well it got absolutely the mass exposure, it got for the Leicester game with what they did. Well, if there's thousands doing that walk, it gets the exposure. During the game, the chanting will get the exposure. The sitting will get the exposure. I'm not expecting Daniel Levy to go, oh, I surrender. I'm now going to sell the club.
Yeah, please don't. Please don't. That's not going to happen.
Oh, mate, the day that happens, mate, I don't know how I'm going to celebrate, but I will be celebrating.
He's going to sell the club at half time. Did you not hear?
Oh, mate, do you know what?
Yeah.
He
pennies in the pound. Pennies in the pound.
You never know. He'll come out and have an interview with Coity and go, yep, that's it. I'm selling. You've done your job. But yeah, what it's all right now is sticking together for people that are against the board and making the numbers count and doing this right and well. And thanks to what Change for Spurs did, and they've done spaces. I've had Jay on my channel a few times. I know Jay's going on a few other channels this week. I know you've got some. they've been doing spaces. They're getting the awareness out there. The international fans are being included, which is a massive part of this. A massive, massive part that have been overlooked. And I'm delighted that the international fans, which I now consider myself one of, have a part to play. And it's all about Sunday, and it's all about coming together. If you feel this way about the board, and helping to put the pressure on them.
Absolutely.
My God,
And even if you don't feel that
way,
way about the board, sorry, just one thing. Even if you don't feel that way about the board, I would still encourage you to go over, because I'll go. Like I say, I'll be over there as long as I'm welcome. I'll be over there, and I will. I won't sing your songs that you sing, and I won't hold up placards or whatever. But I do think that the movement has outcomes that are beneficial in a world where Daniel Levy remains, which I think he will do. So I support it, but. I think people should go over there and support the guys, because people like Brian, who I have absolute respect for, have put in a shift. Other people, not so much. Specifically, a few.
Let's not just get into all that. Let's not get into all of that. But
well, hold on, hang on a second, Ben. I'm not going to get into it, mate. But I was called a saboteur on your channel after the Aston Villa game by a certain person, right? It's ludicrous. I could throw up 100 examples of it.
To name calling and calling out specific people. Let's just leave it at that. But I think we have kind of run out of time. But I just want to get into these super chats just before we end this show. So one from Sebastian Finn saying Arteta lost the dressing room at first too. Phil P says, question, will Sean come to the march in a Daigle mask? You fancy going in the Daigle mask?
No, don't listen.
If we make it, Sean, are you going?
Don't
do that.
No one should.
It might save me getting in a bit of trouble. So yeah, go on.
No one should have the
I'm not sure if
misfortune.
my face is quite wide. I'm not sure. Brian's face is quite narrower than mine. I'm not sure it would.
No one should have the misfortune of having to wear a mask with this fucking Chevy Chase. For damn for sure.
Thomas,
I'll pop over and say hello, like I did against the before the Liverpool game. I'll definitely be over there, and I wish you guys well with it for sure.
Thomas Owen saying, why isn't anyone mentioning Klopp? Well, we did in the end. Mr. Box Office says, why it was the main event not invited to this debate? I'm Ange's biggest fan. Sorry, I meant Pochettino. Sim, Ange is a bang average coach. Truth hurts. Well, the reason that you weren't invited, Mr. Box Office, because every time we do invite you, you don't turn up.
Last time he says, get me on. We sent him a link, said, sorry, I can't.
I did receive a WhatsApp at some point saying, send me the link, I want to come on. I was like, it's not my show.
Scorpion Fan for Life says, Ange's entertaining tactics annoy me. We are banned to FC. Van Saj says, play 442 video. It has a better explanation than you guys watch. Play that video when we can have a discussion here. Levy out.
Yeah, I watched that video. It was
I thought
it was good. I thought it was a good video. Good explanation of Tottenham's problems. I think it's worth a watch.
Does it say that we're on the right path?
Does it say on the right path? I think we're not on the right
path.
Sim's
right? Does he say Sim's right?
It says I'm right, yeah. So go watch it. No, I'm joking. It says Sim from We Are Tottenham TV. Let's have an analysis of why he's right. No, it just goes to show. It breaks down that why Tottenham are not performing the way they should be right now, and that it does suggest that when we get the players back, it'll be a lot better. Yeah.
Big Country Chris says Ange is not about youth. Poch needs to come home. Laurie Booth says towards Spurs headphones for our very own Tottenham tie.
I'm open to them. You want to send them over? I'll wear them.
Someone send over some Tottenham headphones. Sim will gladly wear them with all the merch head to toe. Michael says Europa is important. He won't win it. Why keep him?
Because I think I personally think right now he's our best shot of winning it.
Andrew Din says, Sean, if Poch agrees for a reunion after World Cup 26, will Levy keep Ange? Levy wouldn't pay out Ange's contract and hire a stopgap to pay out again in 18 months.
Well,
I'm not sure what they're saying there, but if Poch comes in, you won't have to pay. If Ange hangs around until 2026, then you won't have to pay
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. Time for Change says, can't believe Ange stuck up for the players performing so poorly. Mind you, compared to his tactics, they played amazing. I'm done with this shit show.
I think he's got to stick up for the players right now. That's his only course of action.
Yeah. Kevin Berry, welcome to Silver. He's just joined the We Are Tottenham TV And Time for Change also says, if we play like we have done recently versus Man United, Levy and Ange need to do the skywalk with their pants down so they can feel how true Spurs fans feel. Got my flag and will be joining the protest on Sunday.
They got to do the skywalk without being chained up as well.
Big Country Chris says, no, I'm not going to go through that one. Dan Green says, Sim, you actually say about the young players not being as tactically aware, but Ange signed them. We have better chance of the Europa without Ange.
Ange did sign them, but I think it's just common sense. I mean, obviously you do get some young players that are ahead of their time, but I think young players, especially people like Bergvall, to an extent Gray, but more Bergvall, I think they're going to take time to get used to this level. I think that's only right. And they're going to make mistakes. They're going to be inconsistent. That's just reality.
But we also got rid of so many players in the summer and only brought in teenagers. And
yeah, that's also a problem. That's also a problem. And I think we should have signed one of the, Eze or Neto or whatever, one of these other players who there were links with. We should have paid the money and got another one of those in, and that could have made a big difference. I think we were right to get a lot of these talented young players, and I think you see with Gray, Bergvall, they have a lot of talent there, and I think they will come good, and they are good, but it's just natural that they're at a different level. They're obviously also being overplayed at the moment. They're just going to make mistakes. It's going to happen.
Michael Hellman says, the recent academy rejuvenation is the only thing that gives me hope at the moment. Come on, you Spurs. That is one of the kind of like shining lights at Spurs at the moment. You look at all the academy lot, what they're doing out on loans at the moment. They're all having sensational loans, aren't they? You look at Donnelly, Keeley, Devine, Abbott, and the list goes on. So it's definitely something to be excited for. Time for Change says, Sean, us Spurs fans don't expect the best players, just players that try. P.S. Do you think your cap looks cool? If we get releases at the end, does Levy sell the stadium to the NFL? Maybe that's his plan. Do you think that's the plan, Sean?
So I was lost on the cap thing. Do I think my cap looks cool? No, I don't. I like it.
Yeah, Is that a shot of David Harris right there?
Yeah, I'm part of the Flat Cap Army. That's the mothership for me. What was the question about the NFL? Sorry, I missed it.
He says, if we get releases at the end, does Levy sell the stadium to the NFL? I'm not entirely sure what that means.
Does he sell the stadium to the NFL? No.
Maybe we start renting the stadium off the NFL.
Well, look, I mean, just quickly on that particular point, Sim, this is one of the things that I always criticise Daniel Levy for and have done for a long time, is as much as I admire him, and I don't think you should criticise him for working within the rules and expecting the rules to be adhered to and enforceable, the fact that there seems to be no real consequences for those that obviously find the loopholes, I would like to see Daniel Levy with the ENIC umbrella and beyond that the Tavistock umbrella to start utilising the loopholes, right? Like release the hotel back to you, sell the hotel to the club and lease it back, sell the stadium to Tavistock and lease it back, sell the flats that are unsold to the stadium and lease them back, or to the club and lease them back. Do whatever everyone else does.
Yeah, that's what Chelsea did.
Yeah, like ultimately, if the rules are there to be manipulated and walked through like a gaping sieve in your kitchen sink, then Daniel Levy is, in my opinion, it's admirable that you hoped for. It's like challenging a guy who comes second in the Tour de France to Lance Armstrong, who's doped up to his eyeballs on steroids. Like, should you challenge the guy for doing it legitimately? I don't think so. But ultimately, if the rules are not going to be enforced anyway, then we have every ability to do exactly the same thing that those clubs are doing. So let's do it.
Not really, because the guy that would have come second would have done everything in his power to train in the most proper manner to get second, where ultimately he'd won the race, where Spurs are not even doing anything in their powers within the rules to get to where they want to be.
Well, but we finished second and third twice, and in the best finishes in the Premier League history. I know we're looking at the very recent history, but if you go back over the annals of Daniel Levy's history, we have participated. Yeah, but okay, I've said already the last 5 years have been a backward step, but the same continuity exists with regards who gets the trophies. All I'm saying is that if Daniel, forget about the analogy about the cycling thing. I'm just saying if Daniel Levy is trying his best to work within the rules are meaningless, then work without the rules anymore. So do everything else that Chelsea are doing, because you've got exactly the same leverage to do so. And I'm an advocate to do it. Right? Let's get ahead of any further rule breaches.
Sign Beyonce permanently. Take some of her earnings. That's what we should do.
Carl Bates says the revenue data is misleading because both Spurs and Villa spend almost the same amount on salary, but Spurs' revenue is 3 times more, hence the lower percentage to Villa's.
Yeah, and that's true, and that's fair. Like it's a fair comment.
Yeah,
and but also means that maybe our revenue shouldn't be level, shouldn't be similar. Our revenue should be higher. That shows potentially, probably.
And finally, last super chat is from Samuel Lynch saying Brian is a good leader.
Get Brian in at half time to rouse the lads.
Can I just say that as well? Thank you very much for saying something like that. But I've always said this, and I'll always stand by it. From everything that I tried to do, there's a lot of work that went behind it. Line change for Spurs are on a much bigger scale now, and obviously, I have the platform. Through you guys, obviously, what I was doing when I first came on, before Tottenham away, before Tottenham on tour, when myself and Brian Ireland left Tottenham away because of COVID restrictions and time differences of doing stuff. There are many, many people that have done so much good work behind the scenes that you'd never know. People like Billy Carnes, who travels up and down this country, Europe, round the world, everything. Ryan Isaacs, Graham, who was at the train. I could list name and name, but either they don't have a social media presence, or they don't have a YouTube presence, or want to come on YouTube. So, kind of when I started protesting with them and doing things, it kind of fell upon me to do I had the outlet to use it, and I was going to. So, as much as when I see that, it's very nice to hear that people think that and see that what we've been trying to do and what I stand for and everything. I have to give credit to everyone that I've done it with, exactly the same level, because they've done the hard graft at matches when obviously I've been in Canada or whatever. There are a lot of people that are behind the scenes that deserve massive, massive credit as well. I'm just fortunate enough, or unfortunate enough, with the way people feel about myself, or look like with Sean Marmite, that I have this platform to come out and talk about it. And I will do everything I can, like I've always said, whilst there is air in my lungs, blood in my veins, and my heart is beating, I will always do whatever I can, however I can, to support the cause.
Brilliant. Big up and great stuff. But that brings an end to the panel. I promised Daigle before we went live this was going to be an hour long, but I think we've stretched a bit over that, so I hope you're right.
VAR, next goal wins. Next goal wins. Golden goal.
Another hour. Let's go.
Don't stop.
We don't stop. But thank you, Brian, and thank you, Sean, for joining us for this panel show. Go and subscribe to their channels, Tottenham on Tour and Spurs Talk Show. But big up to you guys for coming on today.
No worries.
Pleasure, brother. Thanks for having us on.
And we'll see you all soon. Big up to you guys in the chat as well. 2.5 hours of ramblings from us, and we'll see you back here for tomorrow for another day of Spurs content. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.